I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees for Tuesday, November 27th, 2018. Our first order of business this evening is going to be the swearing in of our new board members.
Phyllis Harden, town clerk, will swear in each of the board members together with Ruth and May. Phyllis?
Okay, if everybody wants to stand up and raise their right hand. And after I say I, just state your name, starting with Neil, and come around. I
Neil Shaw.
Clint Folsom.
Laura Skwazinski.
Ken Lish.
do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America and the state of Colorado, the Superior Municipal Code, and faithfully perform the duties of the office of
Trustee. Mayor.
Trustee.
Trustee.
upon which I am about to enter. I do.
I do.
Okay, that's it. If you'll sign your oaths and return them to me.
Why don't we get a photo? I'd like to get a photo of the new board, so we could all just stand and get Martin to take our picture. That'd be great. Let's maybe pull in a little closer here. One, two, three. Thank you. All right, let's stay standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. So please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next we'll have a roll call. Phyllis?
Okay. Mayor Clint Folsom.
Here.
Trustee Sandy Hammerly. Here. Mark Lasis.
Here.
Ken Lish.
Here.
Kevin Ryan.
Here.
Neil Shaw.
Here.
Laura Skwazinski. I know I'm going to butcher that one. Town Manager Matt Magley.
Here.
Town Attorney Dan Harvey.
Here.
Town Clerk Phyllis Harden. Here.
All right, thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda.
I've got a couple things I'd like to pull.
Okay.
First, I'd like to pull 3F from the consent agenda, which is the Vargas contract. Secondly, I would like to table item 8, which is the adoption of the moratorium until we can have an executive session with counsel present to receive legal advice. And I'd like to modify item 7 to at least include some discussion about the moratorium generally, which is just kind of the strategic planning on oil and gas issues.
Okay. Other changes? Neil?
I'd like to move item 3G down to item number 7.
Okay. Any other changes?
I'd like to propose that we swap items 5 and 6 on the agenda.
All right. I think this is the most changes to the agenda we've ever had. So. All right, sign of things to come. All right, but I like them. I like them all. So. Any others?
Already got him.
All right, good. Anyone want to make a motion to
So moved.
approve? Okay, all those in favor? All right, passes unanimous. All right, we're on to 2E, which is reports, questions, and issues. And this is where we just give reports on our past activities, but for new trustees, I'd welcome any comments that you'd like to make about your newly elected positions. So, anyone want to start?
I'll go first.
Mark, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Hope everybody had a nice Thanksgiving and happy holidays. The holiday season is here. The Christmas trees have been lit and the Hanukkah menorah is up and ready, and it's always a beautiful time of year here in Superior when we celebrate the holidays. I wanted to talk briefly about the oil and gas application that the town faced about a little less than a month ago. It was certainly a challenging time for our community, but It was really remarkable seeing the town come together the way the town did and just rally here together at Town Hall. I won't say much about the specifics of the application because we're going to be discussing it further tonight, but I just wanted to express my gratitude and appreciation to all the residents who came to Town Hall, who spoke out, who showed up, who were active and engaged. Although that application has been temporarily or withdrawn right now, it potentially could come back in the future. And oil and gas issues will continue to be challenges that we're going to have to face, that all communities along the Front Range are facing. And as a result, I hope you will continue to stay engaged on this issue because it's just an issue of paramount importance to the town. Relatedly, the CenturyLink property, which was the property that is located on the corner of McCaslin and 128, which is where the oil and gas wells were slated to be placed. I wanted to call the board's attention to a motion and a recommendation that was made at the last OSAC meeting. The minutes are contained in the board's packet tonight, but the OSAC recommendation was that the town board should utilize all means possible, such as the Open Space Fund, associated bonding capacity, and collaborating partners to aggressively pursue the purchase of the CenturyLink property. So basically OSAC was saying, this is our top priority, spare no expense, go after it. Notably, this position was shared by ProStack and is also reflected in their meeting notes as well. This is one of my main goals with this new board. I hope this is something that we can execute on and aggressively pursue to facilitate the acquisition of the CenturyLink property for open space purposes this year. Next, I wanted to give credit and kudos to CAPS for installing the mural that CAPS installed at the bike underpass along the US 36 bike pass. It looks fantastic. CAPS is doing phenomenal work. One of the suggestions that's been made to CAPS, to the Traffic and Safety Committee, I won't say who's suggesting the recommendation, but I like her a lot, so there's a problem intersection at El Dorado K through 8. It's the intersection of Indiana and Mount Sopris. Clint can testify to this. This is not a safe intersection, even though he tries to get people to stop as a crossing guard. It's just a dangerous intersection. One of the projects that CAPS has implemented this past year has been painting crosswalks, which is a great project. It's a success, and it's really helped, I think, people who are, pedestrians traveling the intersections pay more attention. I think we need to do something, bigger to really gain the attention and slow people down as they're entering certain intersections around town. That intersection, I think, is really prime for a really beautiful, transformative art project that hopefully could be led by CAPS. So that would be something I would love to see happen. At that intersection, there's probably others that could use it. But I just wanted to say thank you to CAPS for what you guys are doing. You're doing tremendous work. And then lastly, I just want to welcome the new board, Laura, Ken, and Neil. I'm very excited to work with all three of you. And I feel confident that we've got a really strong and talented group here on the board. And now it's time to get to work. So welcome and congratulations.
Thanks, Mark. Neil, you want to go next?
Sure. I actually don't have a lot of prepared comments. The only thing I will say is with this recently completed election, which is only going to get certified tonight, the participation rate for the town of Superior is phenomenal. For a midterm election, we're looking at an 85% participation rate of registered voters, which is highly unusual for even a presidential year. For a midterm, it's even more unusual. Colorado's, I think, coming in around second for overall participation in our election, in our political process. So, that's really all I want to say. The town has come through. We had a lot of great initiatives that we had to vote on for the state. But I think for Boulder County and for the town of Superior, the commitment to the process is phenomenal. So thank you.
Thanks, Neil. Sandy?
I realized today when I was doing my notes, it had been a month since we'd had a meeting. So it was like I went to about 1 million meetings during that period, so I won't report on all of them. One of the things that I did learn today is that we had another water main break in Original Town. It's the third one in the same general area. And Town Manager, when you give your report, if you could kind of give us a little bit of a sense. I think this is the second one we've had right at that corner of Coal Creek and what is it, 4th. So if you could just give us an update on that. I attended the Northwest Superior update meeting for original town residents way back on October 29th. And I'm really anxious for the board to actually get a presentation on that, because the work they have done is really pretty phenomenal. I think we were all a little bit nervous about the process going in, about whether we would be messing with our actual land use codes, and they've come up with some really great ideas that I think are going to be really particularly good for the folks in Original Town, and seem to be very well received by the residents of Original Town. So I really commend the Planning Commission on the good work they've done there, and look forward to seeing more. I attended the town's volunteer appreciation event on Tuesday, November 1st. And I just really want to compliment town staff on what an amazing event that has continued to grow into. I was not able to go last year, but every year it gets better and better. And this year it was particularly fun because they had a comedian who roasted the mayor a little bit. So he was a real trooper and took a little jabbing there. But he is the superior mayor. We all know that. So, but it was a really, really great event. And I hope our volunteers know that it's a strong indication from the town of Superior how much we appreciate all you do every day, and are really the unsung heroes of our town. So thank you, and thank you staff for a super event. I hosted First Friday at the beginning of November, along with Mayor Pro Tem Sandy Pennington, and she has sort of unofficially, officially handed it off to me to keep it going. And I just want to commit to, I'm sure the rest of my colleagues are going to be happy to help with that too. But I've been going to First Friday for about 3.5, 4 years now. And I just want to commit to everybody, we're going to continue to do it. And I look forward to seeing you all on the first Friday in December. So one of the things that came up at that event was that we need a single page on the town website so people know all the ways they can get connected to the town. And we do now have such a page, and I believe it's called the Stay Connected page. You can go right in from the news button at the top, and you can actually learn more about our new Reddit page and our new Google group, and how you can get involved along with all the other newsletters and groups we have. So thank you, Matt, to you and your staff for getting that set up. I attended the ACES meeting also in November for Trustee Hansen, who I think has now returned to the country, but it's no longer his responsibility. But that committee has become so dynamic since we have changed their name. They're really doing some great work. And later that night, I went to the Rock Creek HOA meeting, and where I was really sad to learn that the longtime president of the Rock Creek HOA, Jim Payne, was stepping down. I hope at some point someone will bring forth a resolution recognizing Jim for his many years of contributions to the Rock Creek HOA, because he's really done a remarkable job. They elected 3 new board members. Brian Shaltikoff was reelected, and 2 new board members, Peter Bottomley, who has served for many years on the ARC, and Renee O'Shea were elected. And Renee's going to be a new and exciting addition to the Rock Creek HOA board. It sounds like the Rock Creek HOA is looking to update their computer systems so that it'll be easier, or their IT systems, so it'll be easier for those who live in Rock Creek to communicate with them, and hopefully a much more robust system for submitting those pesky architectural review requests. It also looks like they're looking at updating the actual architectural guidelines in Rock Creek so that maybe we can do some modernization to the exteriors of our homes. Things that are on the horizon, we'll see, but it was a heavy topic of discussion. I apologize to the members of PROSTEC. I missed their meeting on the 12th because that's when we had our work session here. I attended the CAPS meeting on November 15th. I am so surprised at all the things that this committee is going to try and bite off in 2015 or in 2019. But if any committee can do it, this committee can. So they are currently working hard on their requests for proposals for a consultant to help them with the cultural arts and open and public spaces master plan. So I think their goal is to try and really hone in on that at their December meeting. I think that's about the last thing that I want to report on, other than to say welcome to our 3 new trustees. I look forward to serving with you. I know you're all going to be great additions.
Thanks, Andy. Take it down to Ken.
All right. I attended many of the meetings we already mentioned. I'm not going to repeat everything for everybody. But what I will say is thank you to the residents of Superior for electing me to this position. And I look forward to conducting myself both professionally and with integrity, transparency, and the full competence that this position deserves. So thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Ken. Laura.
So I also want to say thank you so much to the community for electing me. I'm really honored to become your town trustee. My favorite part of this campaign has been getting to know so many amazing neighbors, and I'm certainly looking forward to continuing that as a trustee and not stopping the neighbor gatherings just because I've been elected. I've learned we live in a community of just incredible generosity, warmth, and talent, and I'm really looking forward to engaging with our residents even more and harnessing those ideas and skills to make our town even better. On the meeting front, the Louisville Library Board of Trustees met on November 8th. Trustee Hemmerly was unable to attend, but well, at the time we were trustees-elect. Neil Shaw and I attended. At that meeting, they announced that the January meeting, they will be having officer elections. And for the community, I'd like to note that the first Friday in December, next Friday, December 7th, the library will be hosting a holiday open house from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. At the open house, residents will get the opportunity to meet new library director Sharon Nemchuk. She has a lot of strengths in process improvement, and there was also some talk at the meeting of considering a new strategic plan for the library. That's all from me.
Thanks, Laura. Kevin.
Thanks. A few things. Let me first start by welcoming Ken, Neil, and Laura. We definitely had a scare, as people talked about, with oil and gas over the last few weeks. And I've been personally impressed, and I know everybody in the community was impressed with your level of engagement, your willingness to move calendars and be available, and really most importantly, your impressive knowledge of the town, learning about oil and gas, learning about fracking. So made me very confident about what we will see in the future. That's great news. I'll also be proposing a resolution later this evening where I never have to pronounce your last name, Laura, so I look forward to that. It's going to pass 6-1. Second, I also want to highlight the great work that CAPS has done. So as Mark talked about, we installed that community mural over the holiday, and it really does look great. I see Darryl in the audience, and so hoping she is willing to tell us a little bit about the installation during the public comment. And there's a cool little thing that was, let's wait, I think, until Darryl. Thank you, though. There's a cool little thing that shows that for those that have not yet seen it. And number 3, one of the challenging elements of this election was a local ballot initiative 6A. While the initiative did not pass, I wanted to reassure members of the community, Rocky Mountain Fire Protection District, our local firefighters, that our commitment to partnering with Rocky Mountain Fire has not changed. There should be no level to the change of service, equipment, infrastructure, including training, that is required to keep our communities safe. Glad to see members of Rocky Mountain Fire here in the audience. And later tonight, we'll be discussing the creation of a new committee with the goal of increasing the level of collaboration between Rocky Mountain Fire and the town. I know many people do not support 6A solely because of the language in the ballot initiative, and those concerns should not be extended to mean lack of support to our local fire protection district. These are 2 different things. Because the ballot initiative failed does not mean that the community does not support Rocky Mountain Fire. So more to come after we discuss the community, but did feel like after discussing about the community structure, but wanted to quickly address that and thank the Deputy Chief for being here tonight. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kevin. All right, on October 29th, I joined Sandy Hammerly at the original Town Northwest Superior meeting and also echo the great work that the Planning Commission is doing on that project and thank them for their efforts. November 1st, went to the Volunteer Appreciation Night and thank the staff for putting on a great program and just thank all the volunteers for the many contributions that they make throughout the year that makes our town so great. On November 6th, we had an election and I was reelected. So I want to first thank my wife, Leslie, who without her support, I wouldn't be here. And thank my two sons, Colin and Nick, for their support and the entire community for everyone's support and in trusting me to represent you as mayor for the next 4 years. So thank you all. November 11th, went to Cookies with Veterans event at Asti Park. That was an event organized by local resident Gladys Forshee, and Patrick and staff was there to really put on a great event and appreciate that recognition of veterans on Veterans Day. And the following day, we had an exciting meeting here at Town Hall, the oil and gas work session. Also appreciate the engagement of the community and look forward to further discussion on that subject here tonight. The next day was here at Town Hall for the Superior Marketplace Northwest Superior meeting, and that was a meeting of business owners from the marketplace and also some great ideas for the Northwest area plan. And yesterday I joined the Executive Committee of Metro Mayors at the state capitol for a meeting with Governor-elect Jared Polis, and we had some good discussions about transportation initiatives. And finally, welcome Laura Cannon-Neal to the board. Look forward to great work together. So that's it for me. Matt?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Just following up on Trustee Hammerly's report and the water line break. We do have a break to the main water line in Coal Creek Drive. It's just east of 4th Avenue on Coal Creek Drive. We had a break earlier this year on 4th, just south of Coal Creek Drive. So staff's looking into what may be causes in that area for these breaks. We typically get breaks this time of the year because of the fluctuations in temperature, but not in the same area. So we're investigating further to see if there's a deeper cause there that needs to be addressed. Crews are out. They were out at 3 o'clock this afternoon, and they'll get it repaired as quick as they can to minimize the impact on the residents in the area. So that's the latest, and I'll send updates to the board as I get updates from the city.
Was there any damage to private property?
No damage to private property. There is some interruptions to about 10 residents. They've been notified. You typically go and knock on their door and let them know what's going on. And like I said, we'll get it restored, the service, as quick as we can.
Okay, thanks. And Town Attorney Dan Harvey, welcome.
How are you?
Good.
I have nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. And Phyllis. All right, thanks. All right, we're now on to public comment. If anyone in the public would like to make comment on consent agenda or non-agenda items, now is the time to do so. If you're here to make comment on an agenda item, we ask that you wait till that agenda item comes forth on the agenda. So if anyone in public would like to make comments, just give a little wave. I'll signal you to come up. And yes, sir, come on up. Yes, please. Just start with your name and
Absolutely.
address.
I've prepared a few comments tonight just to make sure I stay on focus. My name is Brad Walker. I live in the town of Superior. My comments tonight are about the airport, and I want to thank the vigorous campaign that the 3 candidates put forth. It was a good campaign. There's a little bit of drama, which makes for an exciting campaign, so it's not dull and boring. But it was a good, vigorous campaign, and kudos to all of you. My name is Brad Walker. I live in Superior, just about 1 mile from Rocky Mountain Airport. I live, pay taxes, and vote in the town of Superior. I'm also a pilot who frequently uses the airport. To give you some ideas of my knowledge of aviation law and regulations, I own a public use, privately owned airport, so I'm well aware of the requirements of airport authority and respective laws. My comments today are about the airport and the potential actions the town board is considering. Before I get into my comments about the airport, I've said kudos to you guys. To begin, I'd like to describe a few absolutes about the airport and airspace. The Federal Aviation Act of 1958 established the FAA and made it responsible for the control and use of navigable airspace within the United States. This is codified in federal law. This means the FAA has full and complete authority over the airspace in the United States. The town cannot propose any changes in navigable airspace without the express consent of the FAA. Rocky Mountain Metro has accepted a lot of airport grant money in the past for various facility improvements. When all airports accept federal grant money for improvements and or changes to the local airfield, this money comes attached with restrictions. These restrictions are known as grant assurances. A grant assurance provides restrictions on what the airport can and cannot do in terms of operations, policies, and procedures. One of the grant assurances that is often litigated is the assurance dealing with economic non-discrimination. This means the airport cannot prevent and or restrict airport operations at Rocky Mountain Metro and must treat everyone equally. I'm glossing over the details here, but rest assured, this means any desire by the town of Superior to propose operating restrictions at the airport could and most likely will expose this town to a legal challenge. The aviation consultants that will be presenting tonight on the surface do appear to be qualified, but I would advise the board their expertise is in dealing with large airports with intensive scheduled commercial operations. Rocky Mountain Metro does not have any scheduled commercial operations. Therefore, they would not be a good fit for what the town's proposing. The consultants are likely to propose airspace changes, and these will require involvement from the FAA. Other changes they are likely to propose are in community engagement sessions. All these efforts incur cost the town of Superior will likely bear and can quickly escalate in cost with no reasonable change in noise for the citizens. Lastly, staff claims the goal of the proposed program would be, and I quote, to create realistic noise solutions that meet industry needs, are consistent with regulatory limitations, and help protect and enhance the quality of life in Superior. When I hear verbiage like this, it sounds to me like the town of Superior is planning on proposing a possible noise ban and or operational changes at Rocky Mountain Metro. I can assure you any proposals like this would be met with a strong and swift legal challenge. AOPA and NBAA have a very long and deep history of litigating issues such as this. I'm confident they would call to action to defend their members, of which I am one, and I would welcome their involvement. In closing, I do not speak for the airport, nor do any particular pilot organization, but my experience in the pilot community is we do want to be involved in a meaningful discussion about how to improve the quality of life for those affected by any perceived noise. It helps everyone to be good neighbors. Hopefully my comments, if there's any questions, I'm happy to provide answers. Hopefully my comments weren't too dire considering the new members joining the board tonight. So.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Additional public comment? Yes.
Good evening, Ryan Welch. I'm the Vice Chair of OSAC. I want to thank the board and a lot of town staff that I see here tonight for all your service to the town. Also welcome new board members. I came here tonight to bring up or to read the recommendation that we had in our packet. Trustee Lasis, he beat me to the punch on that, but the reason I came up is I still felt it was relevant to add a few other points around the discussion when we talked about making that recommendation that I think are relevant to the discussion. First of all, it passed unanimously with the OSAC committee. This property has been from the 2005 Open Space Summary Report and Recommendation. This is the highest ranked property left from that recommendation for purchase. We also redid that recommendation in 2018. It was the highest ranked property in that update that we published this year. The property isn't currently for sale, right? There's not a for sale sign up there, but we are engaged with the Trust for Public Lands to see if we can get some engagement with them, to see if we can find the right people to get the discussion going. The engagement with the Trust for Public Lands was before the oil and gas scare on their property. But the interesting thing that has taught us is that we do need to look at how, when we acquire a property, can we look at mineral rights? We don't know, we just talked about it. We need to do a little bit more investigation, but that was a good lesson that we've learned out of that whole situation. And then the final point I wanted to make that I think is important is that the general feeling from OSAC is that we would have made the same recommendation without the recent oil and gas scare, right? This has been on the top of our list really since everybody on the committee has been on the committee, and like I said, all the way back to 2005. So anyway, just wanted to give you that additional detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment? Daryl.
Good evening, Daryl McCool, Chair of the CAPS Committee, and welcome new board members. I'm really excited to have you on board. And we do have a little bit of fun tonight. As you might have heard, we installed the mural that not only the CAPS Committee was involved with, but many, many members of the community, the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the Superior Chamber, the Parks and Recs built the framework that this went up onto, and actually have been back and put flashing it up and made it very weatherproof. So it was a true community project, and I think of this as a quilt, but in paint and wood format, because this is sort of how communities gathered over quilting bees and things like that. And this, to me, represents a real piece of fabric of this community, and I hope you enjoy the next 25 seconds. Do you want me to find it? Yeah, sorry. Scroll it down. Sorry. Okay. Oh, it's right there. Sorry. Okay, hit the full screen. And by the way, this was 4 hours of time.
You guys were fast.
Yeah, we did. And really special thanks to Mike Yates and Bob McCool, who were up on those ladders for hours, putting those things up. And the Parks and Recs guys supplied all the tools and the ladders and the screws. And it was quite a fun process. So, and we're looking forward to doing a lot more, including painting crosswalks and hopefully intersections for you guys. No, we're done. That's it. Thank you. You can scroll up there.
Okay. Thank you very much, Daryl.
Great job, Daryl. That was awesome.
Great idea with the time lapse.
Thanks.
Additional public comment?
I have a question.
If you want to come, if you can come up.
Airport comment, and should I hold it until after the consultants? I mean, is that?
That's not an agenda item, so if you want to make comment on that, now would be the time to do that.
My name is Lori Muir, and I moved to Cal Monte a little over 2 years ago. I was aware of the airport when we signed the contract for our home. And over the 7 months that it took for our home to be completed, my husband and I spent a lot of time checking on its progress and getting familiar with Cal Monte and the surrounding neighborhoods. Though we noticed an uptick in the air traffic over the late spring and summer months of 2016, our MMA still seemed overall like a small, regional, general aviation airport, and we were not really overly alarmed. The following year, they must have added a flight school or two, because the number of extremely noisy, older model single-engine planes flying touch-and-go routes over South Rock Creek exploded, sometimes with 2 or 3 students taking off and tracing the exact same routes spaced only 60 to 90 seconds apart. This created a situation in which there was literally nonstop noise for an entire hour, and then that scenario was often repeated many times during that day and into the night. We were grateful for the relative quiet of the winter months, but when spring 2018 arrived, the number of flight school touch-and-go patterns once again exploded. This past summer, it was so bad that we found ourselves scheduling constant outings to escape from the incessant airplane noise, ruining our enjoyment of our own neighborhood. The sad thing about this is that it's completely unnecessary and easily remedied. Over the past year, I've studied in depth both the RMMA and Jefferson County websites and have come to a couple conclusions. First, based on the map of noise-sensitive areas in the aircraft rules and regulations section of both websites, the noisy and repetitive flight school traffic, which makes up probably somewhere between 60 and 70% of takeoffs and landings at RMMA, should never have been routed over a densely populated residential area like Superior, and most certainly not over El Dorado Elementary School, especially when there are alternate routes that would not require flying over a designated noise-sensitive community like ours. If the winds require a northwest takeoff, instead of turning left over Rock Creek South, the student pilots could turn right and fly their pattern over Northwest Parkway, Highway 36 corridor, which is abutted by fields, cattle grazing, some light industrial and office parks, and virtually no residential neighborhoods. If the wind direction dictates a south or easterly takeoff, which should actually be the case most of the time during the spring and summer months, when the prevailing winds are either from the south or are light and variable, that pattern could be reversed. So you have to wonder, why are they routing their student pilots almost exclusively over Superior? Have they deliberately chosen to route the flight training noise over Superior because in their view we have no way to hold them accountable? How many of us call the complaint line repeatedly to no avail? How many of us have simply given up at this point? Are they targeting us to avoid noise complaints from the residents of Jefferson County, who do have the ability to hold them accountable at the ballot box? Could they possibly have side agreements with real estate developers in North Jefferson County to keep as much airport noise as possible away from their developments? Second, for those who say that the flight school traffic is routed over Superior because that's what the FAA-controlled tower dictates, I say that makes no sense. Why would the FAA deliberately route novice aviators flying noisy, ancient 1970s era single-engine planes over a densely populated residential area and an elementary school with over 900 K-8 students when there are better, safer alternatives? No, I think this policy originated with the Jeffco commissioners, with buy-in from the airport director. If you read the rules and regulations on RMMA and Jeffco's websites, the airport director has complete control over the flight schools. If he says touch-and-go patterns need to be reversed to avoid sensitive areas, noise-sensitive areas like Superior, it will happen. And we'll still have noise from general aviation traffic, but that's a much smaller percentage of the takeoffs and landings. And I think that the majority of us would be very satisfied with that outcome. So how do we make this happen? I'm all for playing nice and going through the recommended process. But if that doesn't produce a satisfactory result, I strongly suggest we start FOIA and CORA requests to establish the baseline facts on which to file a lawsuit, because it really looks like we've been targeted to endure the bulk of noise generated by our MMA, and that is neither fair nor acceptable.
Thank you. Additional public comment? Any additional public comment? Okay. We'll move on to presentations. Next, we have a update from the Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, Tricia
Good evening, trustees, mayor. My name is Tricia Brostovich. I'm a resident of Superior, Colorado, also the interim executive director for the Superior Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome our new board members and congratulations to Mayor Folsom. We have at the Superior Chamber of Commerce are 255 members strong in this community, and we have value our partnership with the town of Superior and are looking forward to continue that in 2019. Our latest and upcoming event is this Saturday, December 1st, the Skate and Now Shop with Santa event at the sports stable. It's scheduled between 3:15 and 4:45. So we'll have pictures with Santa, compliments of Superior Imaging. We'll have hot chocolate and cookies, compliments of Panera. We have Dixon Orthodontics as our premier sponsor, and we'll have the Chick-fil-A cow skating around with Santa and all of our families and kids. So we hope that everyone in the town will come out and enjoy a lovely skate with Santa. And the biggest prize of all, or the biggest surprise of all, we've had the town of Superior partner with us to create a winter wonderland on the West Rink so that everyone can enjoy a magical lights display. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Tricia. I want to invite Bob McCool up, who's the on the board of directors, or he's the president of the board of directors of the chamber, and kind of give us an update on the selection process.
Sure, you bet. So several weeks ago, you guys know that Heather moved on to greater things that we're very excited for her, and we started a search for a new executive director. Thank you to Tricia for accepting our position as interim director as we go through this process, and she is also one of the applicants for the director's position. We have started interviews. We did advertising across several platforms. We've received resumes from all over the country, as well as local. Our focus obviously is local, but I think we are talking to some others as well. Interviews started this week. We've got 2 more latter part of this week, and I think 2 or 3 more next week. So we're in process at this point, and hope to make a decision sometime in December, early January on our selection. So,
okay, very good.
I don't know if you have any other questions for the chamber and what we discussed, but
yeah, a couple of weeks ago, Matt Magley and I met with Bob and with Carrie Nash, who's also on the board of directors, and just wanting to open the dialogue between the board of trustees and the board of directors of the chamber to express that we at the board have made a commitment to increase the budget for economic development on the board, and with this new director coming on board, we wanted to explore the idea that there could definitely be some synergies between the efforts that the chamber's trying to do, mostly from existing businesses, recruiting new businesses to be part of the chamber, and a lot of those same goals the Board of Trustees share. So we wanted to start that dialogue and probably continue that dialogue through probably a special work session or meeting with the Board of Trustees and the Board of Directors of the chamber, and do that fairly soon so that we can make sure that we're not doing things separately. We want to make sure we're doing things at the board level that complements what you're doing, and really vice versa, because we're a small town. We all have the same goals, and want to make sure that we're working together on those efforts. So I'd welcome any brief comments. I'm sure everybody's got detailed comments about that, but just welcome any brief comments that people might have on the idea of their search of new director and kind of what we're hoping to accomplish with the new budget for economic development at the board.
And maybe a quick update too about what the chamber, I'm sure everybody roughly knows what the chamber does, but our mission is supporting the economic vitality of the community of Superior. I have that roughly right. I don't read it every meeting, but our responsibility is to the membership of the chamber, of which 2/3 is actually outside of the town of Superior, and about 1/3 of our members of Superior. That's growing obviously as we have businesses grow in Superior. But our responsibility is helping and supporting the businesses once they're established and when they join the chamber. We do have a number of businesses in town that aren't in the chamber, some of them because the corporate regulations don't permit them to join chambers, things like that. But, you know, I think there are opportunities there to work with the town on how do we support our existing businesses as effectively as possible. There are projects I know we're working on that Tricia's talking to Matt about one of them currently that we could work together on to just help improve the businesses and their visibility in the town and so on. So I certainly welcome any thoughts or comments or on how we can work together better.
Bob, I just had a thought over the weekend, particularly with our emphasis on economic development. Is there any value to us having even a trustee liaison to the Superior Chamber that would come and be a part of your meetings and at least update your members and also be able to bring concerns back to the town?
I'd be happy to bring that to the board to talk about it more. Personally, my opinion is I think that would be great. We've had Matt occasionally come and give us some updates, but there's always questions about what's going on in town, what are the projects that are happening, where are they, and how can and should we be involved. So I would expect they'd welcome that, but I'll definitely bring that up with the board and see.
Thanks.
I'd like to echo that any partnerships that we can form would be appreciated. I think our economic development program is something that I'm looking forward to making much more robust than we have in the past. So any efficiencies that we can glean from each other to make sure we're not duplicating efforts, I think would definitely be best going forward. So I appreciate any willingness to work together that the board is willing to offer.
And that was one of the things Mayor Folsom brought up too, is make sure we right hand knows what the left hand's doing and that we're working together to support the businesses.
You know, one of the, in connection with just economic development, you know, we tripled the budget in terms of what we're spending on economic development now. And we had a discussion during the budgeting process that might not necessarily be enough, but it was a start. And I'm glad we did that. And I think that it's going to pay dividends. You know, I think one of the benefits to whomever is actually serving as a consultant for the town with respect to economic development would be to have the chamber's opinion as to what is really lacking in terms of businesses and service providers in town, and what does the chamber feel we really need, and then we can then convey that information to the consultant, and then they can be more focused in terms of how to attract those types of businesses to town. So just something to think about, but I wish you guys luck, and I think it's going to be great that we're all spending more time and energy on this whole project. I think a lot of it also will have to be involved with the development of downtown Superior and then Northwest Superior Plan and the marketplace redevelopment, but all of those things coming together. This is a challenging time for retail. It's going to be over the next 20 years, even more so, and we need to be proactive in the way we're actually thinking about attracting businesses that can come to Superior and then stay in business and thrive.
And we have a highly active membership, a lot of smart people running a lot of great businesses. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. Great.
I want to add, as part of this election, I talked to a handful of business owners that are in Superior, and they all complained. Okay, a few of them complained about how they're uncompetitive just by crossing the street, the other side of Highway 36. One of them, I think, has emailed the mayor as well as Matt, in terms of thinking about moving to Louisville, but maybe he's trying to stay here in terms of the operating costs. And, one of the things that came out to me is I haven't seen a competitive analysis of what it costs to do business in Superior versus some of the adjacent communities. And if we work together, the chamber, the town, everybody, to put everything on the table in terms of what it's going to cost to run a business in the two Superior versus all the neighboring communities, I think that'll work great in terms of trying to attract people that want to start up small businesses, because getting over that early hump is huge. And if you could park yourself in Louisville and increase your operating margin by 3x, it's a hard thing to deviate from. So I'd be happy to help with that as much as possible.
And I will say I did that exact thing. So yes, that's a great idea, because knowing what it's going to cost is important. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bob and Tricia.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, our next presentation is our aviation consultant presentation.
Patrick Hammer, our Parks, Recreation, Open Space Director, and his staff Karen have been working a lot on this issue. Our level of expertise from internal staff level is not what it needs to be in this area. So we've been talking to other communities, entities about what we can do to help foster communications, discussions with the airport, and help the community in general with the complaints that we've been hearing from our residents. Through our efforts to research and talking to other communities that had similar issues, we've identified a company that we think will help us facilitate those discussions, has the expertise in order to help with those negotiations and discussions, and hopefully get to some set of realistic, reasonable requests, agreement with the airport that will help with the ongoing issue that we're seeing here. Tonight, the consultant is here. They have a presentation to the board. After the presentation, take questions from the board and any comments that you might have before and if we move forward. With that, Patrick, do you have anything else you want to add to?
Patrick Hammer, town staff, excited to introduce Jason Schwartz and Jim Allardyce, who are with ABC X2 Consulting. They've had a good couple of months of dialogue with us and I think have a good presentation and have done a good preliminary job of some fact finding on our behalf and helping kind of bridge the communication gaps that we were finding between the town and the airport. So with that, I'll introduce Jason and Jim, and presentation's ready.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. I'm Jim Allardyce. I'm the managing partner of ABC X2. Our backgrounds are kind of up there. The firm is actually just 5 partners as of January 1st this year. And we're a small company, but we have big talent, and hopefully we can help improve the quality of life here for your town. My background is in air traffic. I was in air traffic control for 34 years, the last 10 years of which I was on staff, which is where I got most of my airspace and procedures knowledge, and have been able to help communities since I retired from the FAA to address some of their noise and environmental issues, as well as some airspace and procedures issues along the way. So as of now, Jason's going to kind of give you an outline of the plan that we have going forward. Today, we aren't here with solutions. We're here with a plan, and we want your feedback on that plan at the end of the presentation, because we definitely want to do what you all want / need us to do. So with that, I'll give you Jason Schwartz.
Good evening. I'm Jason Schwartz. Work with Jim, and I wanted just to say that we've been looking at the issues that you guys are having. We've started with a high-level airspace and that type of analysis, and then we'll be digging deeper as we go. As Jim said, we're starting today with sort of just a baseline. Trying to introduce the approach, the company, and what we intend to do, and then get feedback from you all as far as does that align with your expectations. So real quickly, you saw our background a little bit on that first slide. Wanted to introduce you to the kinds of clients that we have. And as you see up there, local governments, communities. We work with residents, we work with community groups, local governments, and airports. So it's kind of across the board. Most of the time, especially the work that I'm involved with, is noise related or community impact related. So could be air quality, could be noise, could be a number of issues, but there's some kind of incompatibility, between the airport and the surrounding community. You can see the kinds of areas that we work in. The 2 big ones for me, my portion of the work that we do focuses on aircraft noise and then community engagement. And so both, as you'll see in our next slide, which talks about our process, they're interrelated, and I think you'll find that that's the most effective way to address these issues. As far as clients, we've worked with, my experience started in working in airports. I've worked at small general aviation airports with 1 runway, all the way up to commercial service airports, and Jim's background includes working at Atlanta Hartsfield, where not only did he manage air traffic control operations, but he also did a lot of work with procedure design and working actually with a local community that's just adjacent to Atlanta Airport. And for those that don't know, it is the world's busiest airport, which he reminds me often. But he worked very closely, he and his counterparts, with the community to say, we understand that there's impacts, and they worked hand in hand, and they were able to, through collaboration, find sort of outcomes that everybody could live with, I guess is the best way to put it. I think what led your town staff to us was the project there at the top. We worked very closely recently with Centennial Airport and their roundtable specifically. I work with them on their roundtable planning and also helping them with engagement with the airport. And, you know, their challenge is how do we get the airport to understand, listen to, and address the impacts of noise on the community. So very similar, I think, to what you're dealing with here. So I think we feel very confident that we'll be able to help you engage the airport more effectively and probably the FAA, and then to address the noise issues that you're dealing with. So real quick, our approach is three-phased right now, the way we see it. Starting with a baseline assessment, and we've kicked that off. What we're looking at first and foremost is what are the specific noise issues that your community is dealing with. So it could be closed traffic where you have touch and go activity, could be business jets that are coming in and out, could be nighttime operations or daytime. There's all sorts of nuances of what impacts the communities, and then of course it depends where the communities are located relative to the airport and the traffic patterns. So one of the things we'll be assessing is what are the impacts that the community is most concerned with, and then looking at sort of the operational aspects. So how does the airport flow? Where are those local traffic patterns? Where are the departure patterns for when you're not staying close in and doing touch and goes? If you're flying out, say, to another region, what is the path that they take? Is that over, for instance, Superior? And is there anything that we could do to tweak that so it goes over a more compatible area? Looking at the airspace, there's a lot of interaction between the airspace for the local airport and, say, Denver. So we have to figure out, well, how do the two work? What options are there for tweaking things? We're looking at the noise program. It's somewhat limited right now. I think most of what I've learned has been from their website. I think there's a lot of opportunities for them to expand it, although from talking with their staff, they're very open to expanding it, but they're not really that experienced in noise programs in general. So they seem very open to looking at some best practices and things that they can do to improve things. And then looking at the local land use and zoning around the airport to see what areas in terms of land use and zoning would be compatible versus what's going to be sensitive to those aircraft operations. So we'll put all that sort of together. That'll give us our baseline, and we'll start to understand what are the issues and then what are the opportunities we have to make improvements. And that's where we switch into the strategy development. So notional flight procedures is sort of model procedures that we could then take to the FAA to say, look, if you change the current flight procedures and tweak them, you'll be able to route the planes still safely and efficiently, but you can reduce the impacts because you're no longer perhaps flying over a residential area. Best practices and policies and procedures are typically airport related. So how the flight schools operate, getting them to be more cognizant of where they're operating and how they're operating, and identify operations or practices that will reduce that noise while allowing them to manage their business. And then a big piece is that the last two, the collaboration, engagement, and the outreach. And we feel strongly, and I've seen it in practice, that collaboration is really necessary. I mean, obviously, the city or the town of Superior can't manage the airspace or the FAA regulations or how the airport operates. But what we can do is work with you guys and then the airport to get that dialogue going, so the airport is aware of what the specific issues are. And we can start a dialogue and collaborating on how can we meet the goals of both sides. It's complex, but it's not impossible, and it's actually very doable. And so during that identification phase, what we'll be doing is coming up with a strategy and then presenting it to staff to say, okay, which of these do you feel most comfortable with, and which ones should we pursue? And then finally, implementation is obviously what it sounds like. We'll support you through the implementation, make sure that what was agreed upon in the strategy in terms of the town and the airport and or FAA is being implemented, and then helping come up with measures so we can track, if the airport said that a certain pattern will be used or a certain way of operating will be conducted or changed, is that being followed through with? So we'll help you along the way there. And also, if you choose to consider and implement ongoing engagement programs, whether that's working groups or anything like that, roundtables like we worked on with Centennial, we can help you establish that as well. I won't go through all the stakeholders, but this is kind of our vision on how we can get this done. You've got the industry stakeholders who obviously want to fly and operate their businesses in a safe and efficient manner. Then you've got the community stakeholders, some of which do utilize the airport or benefit from it, others may not. So we've got two sides with sometimes differing interests. And what we'd like to do is bring everybody's interests together and again, look for ways that we can address the impacts while allowing the airport to be an airport. A lot of that is education of the folks you see on the left side. We can go to them and say, well, here's when you're impacting the community, and here's some ways that you can do your business or do your job safely without having such an impact. And typically, we're successful in brokering those agreements. And again, at the top there, we're focused on collaboration engagement. And typically, that's the way that you get this stuff done. And I feel very confident that we'll be able to do that. We did have a brief meeting this morning with the airport staff, and they were completely open and supportive to the approach that we're presenting here. And they're ready to work with us on your behalf. So I think we'll be able to get through this successfully and meet those expectations. As far as challenges and opportunities, we're really just starting out in the process. I've been told that you've heard no a lot, so you want something changed, and it's like, no, we can't do that because of X, Y, or Z. Some of that is accurate. In some cases, I think there's ways that we can kind of look out of the box, and we can make some changes and still stay legal and safe. A couple of things that we found preliminarily is the rising terrain, which I think was to the west, is that right? Clearly we can't change the terrain, so aircraft can't take off and immediately turn left or west into a mountain range. So that's kind of a non-starter. And then to the east of y'all, there's Denver, and Denver's airspace is going to be pretty complex. Having said that, there are ways that, and Jim's looked at some notional procedure designs, that we can snake procedures through between both of those, moving them perhaps away from some of their more dense residential areas over more compatible land. Some of the other challenges that we're facing is just the residential development and where it is relative to, say, the end of the runways. For anybody familiar with aviation, planes take off, they come off of the runway, and then they have to establish, kind of got to get stable before they can start making turns. So if there's a community right at the end of the runway, it's really difficult to do anything in that particular scenario. But a little bit further out, there are options for changing course and turning and doing things like that. On the opportunity side, the most important one is, like I said, you've got stakeholders here that are committed to collaborating, and they're open to it. We weren't sure what we would get when we went to the airport this morning. We were really pleasantly surprised that they're ready to work with us and to support your interests in terms of reducing noise impacts. There's definitely a shared commitment to improving the quality of life for the region. I didn't get the sense from the airport that they just were concerned about their neighbors or their residents. They see themselves as part of the community, and they do, from what I heard this morning, want to be good neighbors. So, and I think as we move forward through this baseline assessment, we'll have much more information to share with you in that respect. So we wanted to keep our formal presentation kind of short so we can really get into what you're interested in talking about. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to questions and answers.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Questions from the board? I'll lead off with one. And what can you tell us about Next Gen, the FAA's changes in air traffic patterns? How much or little is that playing into Rocky Mountain Airport's issues versus other issues going on there?
You want to take that?
Sure. So, Next Gen, it's kind of become a four-letter word since Phoenix. The initial idea behind it was to increase the efficiency of airspace in airports. The FAA, when they engaged in the Next Gen process, did what they call a categorical exclusion at a lot of airports, which caused a lot of angst with neighbors around the airports, because that did not require a full environmental review for the airports. Denver recently went through such an airspace change, their Metroplex. They did add numerous what they call PBN, or performance-based navigation procedures. However, from just a preliminary review of the airport here, the actual departure procedures that they would use for instrument aircraft, instrument flight rules aircraft departing this airport, really did not change. The conventional departure procedures and the departure procedures that they use to join the area navigation routes, which are the satellite-based GPS routes, are virtually identical coming off of the airport. So the direct impact of NextGen to this airport appears to be pretty small. The only ancillary procedure, I think, that could be considered a NextGen procedure would be the arrival procedure to runway 12 left that comes in from the northwest. And that appears to be the only instrument procedure that they can use to arrive at the runway when they're in a southeast flow. So I would say, as a whole, minimal impact to this airport from NextGen.
Okay, so thank you. Additional questions? Sandy?
I just wanted to refer back to one of the comments we had in public comment. What is your level of experience with smaller airports? Hartsfield, Rocky Mountain, not the same thing. So can you give me an example of a couple of smaller airports? I know you've had success at Centennial, but are there some other airports that you can cite that are more along our lines, just so?
Sure. Well, I'll go first and then let Jason chime in. So, yeah, I mean, my background in the FAA was Hartsfield. I just like to brag about that because I think it's pretty cool. But yes, since retiring, we have worked at smaller airports. One of the ones that we've been very successful at is Truckee, Tahoe, just northwest of Lake Tahoe. And they're in a mountainous area like you guys are, so they have similar challenges to what you all do. One of the things that we have done for them is we've designed 2 notional departure procedures, and with the sole purpose of trying to be as noise friendly as possible to the community. So it's a much smaller community than Hartsfield. And, we've worked very collaboratively with the airport there, and they are really already very good at the community engagement piece, and they have their own advisory board where they, get feedback from the community and stuff like that. So we've got a lot of input from the community out there working for the airport, actually, that has been very positive in some of the things that we've been able to do for them as well. One of the other ones that I think is significant was the Laguna Beach community was affected by NextGen. And the way they were affected was that the routes that were proposed and implemented were actually going to be very good for them because they caused the aircraft to go out and around Laguna Beach, out over the ocean. But what happened consistently was aircraft were being shortcutted back over the city. They had actually filed a lawsuit, and we were able to go in and negotiate a settlement agreement with the FAA by, just actually collaborating with the controllers that were working on that project. Oh, that's nice. Wow. Talk about the FAA, and all of a sudden you hear the Darth Vader theme. What is up with that? So, well timed, sir, well timed. So anyway, I think the significant thing was that we were able to come up with a settlement agreement and get them out of a lawsuit. So that saves everybody money. That's one of our major goals, is to avoid getting into litigation. So we believe we can do that through the efforts that we have outlined here. And I'll let Jason go ahead.
Yeah, for me, the closest airports in terms of size would be Hillsborough Airport in Oregon. It's a GA airport, similar size. And then Troutdale Airport also in Oregon, which is a single runway, very light GA, not nearly the amount of corporate traffic that you have here. And then I've worked at small commercial / general aviation type airports as well. And I mean, there's a big difference between Hartsfield, I guess, and the local airport, but the smaller airports and the medium-sized airports that we've worked at, the issues are the same, the players are the same, the regulations are the same. So I don't feel any angst as far as, can we take what we've done at other airports and apply it here with the same level of success.
Okay. Kevin, Neil, and then Ken.
So in black and white, it's the problem with being in the middle. I have some questions about the process and the contract, so there'll be a combination for you and for Matt, I suppose. We've signed a contract?
So then, kind of jump forward on what I think you might ask is the next step would be if the board thinks they want to move forward with this plan that's being proposed, is we would work with them to identify hours for each phase, a not to exceed amount, come back at December 10th with an agreement for you guys to consider, and then move forward at that point.
So so you're working kind of on our behalf today, kind of on good faith, assuming we're going to have a contract?
And if the board decides, this is not something that you want to move forward with, we would pay them for their time up to this point and then figure out what we're going to do next.
And if I remember correctly from the email, we're at $200 an hour?
Yes, I think yep.
Tell me about the budget you did for Centennial. That was an engagement not entirely dissimilar. What was your total billing to Centennial?
I'd have to pull the invoice. That was a fixed cost contract for a particular event, and then the process leading up to the event, but I don't have the invoice off the top of my head.
So you didn't do, for Centennial, you didn't run those work groups, create those work groups, do a similar assess, recommend, execute phase?
No, it wasn't it was a different, they have a roundtable and they needed strategic planning support for the roundtable, so this wasn't for the airport. And it wasn't for the city, it was specifically, they have a community-based noise roundtable and they wanted help with strategic planning and then facilitate a retreat or planning meeting and then helping with engaging the airport. So it was a different project, same noise issues, but different approach. They have a roundtable, which is something that you guys might choose to do, but they don't, it was a different project, different strategy.
So you've got a few phases here. You've got the initial assessment phase for a few months, and then you've got 2 more phases for anywhere from 3 to 6 months. So looking at roughly a 12-month engagement for all 3 phases. Would this be full-time work, half-time work, 1/4 FTE? What are we looking at?
No, so we try to be very frugal with your money. One of the things that we've done, and I'll go back to Truckee, that contract was a phased contract. It was about an $85,000 contract in total, of which our company got $48,000 out of that. And to date, we have spent less than $25,000 up there. And one of the things that we did with them, and we can do it very easily with y'all, is work by task order. In other words, you give us 10 or 20 hours to do specific tasking, and we get done with that, and then you assess whether you're getting your money's worth. And if you say yes, you give us a task order for another 10 or 20 hours. That way you have control of the budget. It's not unlimited. We just don't go off willy-nilly doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And you actually get a periodic check on, are you getting your money's worth out of us? And that's the way we like to work, because we like to give you your money's worth. We want what we do to be measurable for you guys, to have a measure of success that you can actually point to and say, this is what we got for our money. That's our goal in every contract. So, yes, sir.
So let's just talk about that a little bit more. So the contract I believe you're proposing would be T&M. So you did a fixed price contract for Centennial. In your Truckee contract or in any other contracts, have you done something based on some type of more desirable outcome or some type of service level or some improvements? And this is
specifically a performance-based type contract. So, no, we have not. And I think that's kind of the nature of the beast. Unfortunately, it's not something that you can say, I can give you this at the end of the line, because in the time that we put in with the airport and with the community, trying to figure out what we can do and what we can't do, there's different answers at every airport. It's the old adage, once you've seen one airport, you've seen one airport. So from that standpoint, they're all a little bit different, and the interactions are a little bit different. What we can do is develop those expectations along the way. And like I said, we can put stops in along the way so that you can see whether we're making progress or not. If we don't make progress at a rate that you guys approve of, then you terminate the contract.
Okay. So I really like this idea. I'm torn by this, because what I've told Matt and staff before is when we don't have the expertise, we're a really small town with, anywhere between 29 and 31 employees. We're not going to have expertise in things like navigation, oil and gas, and big business development initiatives, and we should seek the expertise of outside consultants. On the other side of that coin is, while we're a pretty small town, we have a very engaged community. Mm-hmm. You heard a little bit about in the comments tonight about the scare we had with oil and gas. You can't believe how many people came out from the community who had just tremendous level of expertise around this. And so I'm thrilled to hear I like the presentation. I agree with everything in the presentation. I'm a consultant, so it's kind of consultant-esque in the three-phase, right? But I want to be cautious here that we're not, to me, this looks like a pretty large engagement that could get north of $50,000 pretty quickly. We have a lot of priorities in the town, and as I said in an email 4 or 5 weeks ago, I want to be really thoughtful about whether or not this engagement should jump the line for those other priorities. We didn't have a set of requirements where we pushed an RFP and engaged folks. I think we found you guys based on some good research. Undoubtedly, you have tremendous qualifications. I just want to be really thoughtful, so I want to think about it over the next couple of weeks. And when I see the contract on the 10th, expect I'm going to push back pretty hard around that contract, and anything you could do to better define some favorable outcomes that the community would like to see. I like the task order idea. That will make sure we don't get too far over our skis. But I want to be thoughtful here about this, because we are proposing that this jump the line over some other priorities that the community desires.
Absolutely. And just for clarification, you asked if this was full-time, and the 3-month time span, the reason it's spread out that much is because we're dependent on, say, the airport staff and when are they available to meet with us or to have a telecon. So we're not charging, it's definitely not a 40-hour per week project. So if you see 3 months, it's not 40 hours a week times 4 weeks times 3 months.
No, I understand, but even if it's, there's a couple of you, so if you're 10 hours a week, and there's a lot of work to be done.
Sure.
And 10 hours a week is going to be, a couple $1,000. We're going to get that bill north of $20,000 within a 2 or 3 month period. And if there are members of the community, a big part of the engagement, I want to be involved the community stakeholders. We heard from one today. I want to hear from other community stakeholders, and any work we can get from other experts for free, frankly, and that are members of the current community and utilize the airport either as pilots or experience the airport. I want to make sure we're engaging the community.
And that's fair. One of the things, like what Jason was talking about your own advisory board, if you find that you have a lot of expertise here in the town, and we can facilitate you, setting up your own advisory board that can take over the kind of facilitation duties, the communications duties with the airport and stuff like that. We'd love to have a long-term contract with y'all and be here forever. But that's generally not what we do. What we do is we go in, we make suggestions, we follow through on the actions that we've committed to, and when that's done, we get out, unless there's something more that the community wants us to do. So, you know, it's not our purpose or intention to just sit here and just keep going and going and going forever, like the Energizer Bunny. You know, if we can facilitate setting up your own local resources, we'd be happy to do that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Neil.
Jason, Jim, thanks for coming in. I spent my career, I started off at Boeing, and then I actually lived in Hillsborough. So the fact that you mentioned Hillsborough, I lived under that airport. And for everybody that doesn't realize it, there's a helicopter flight school that gets international students, you know, a new batch of students would show up like every week. And the Intel corporate jets were taken off 8 times a day or more. So the fact that you did a lot there, that's impressive. But what's a little bit dissimilar about Hillsborough versus here is Hillsborough was the entirety. The airport sat in the town. The flight path was around the town. If you go back 2 slides, I'm a little afraid about what the town is trying to take on here relative to all the stakeholders. You know, we're the smallest group on that entire list. Or maybe one more slide. You know, if you look at, you know, all those counties and cities and town, well, we're the only town. Other than the airport staff, there's every other group on that is bigger than this, you know, the entirety of what we have available here. And I'm a little afraid at our ability to, you know, change, you know, the direction for Jefferson County. Resident Lori pointed out the air traffic. It has grown 30% since 2015. It was 130,000 flights in 2015. It's 167,000 last year. And that was, you know, after a period of basically no growth between 2011 and 2015, and they are just rocketing in terms of flight growth. The airport's losing money. You know, I think most airports do. I don't even know that Jefferson County commissioners realize that it's losing $3 million a year. But my real question to you is, as I looked at the companies that you've worked with, and as I thought about Hillsborough, is, you know, tell us about other situations where you've approached this kind of you know, kind of a patchwork of, you know, we're this little tiny island, you know, at the north end of the airport that's crying and screaming wolf, but, you know, relative to the others, I don't know that they care. I know that you said that the airport has been receptive to the conversation. I just don't know that it's in their economic interest to be, you know, really concerned about what we say, because we don't vote for anybody in that you know, oversees the airport. We don't control the salaries. We don't influence, you know, anything. If they fly south, it affects those property values, which is part of that county, but not ours. So just, I want to understand a little bit better, you know, as you talked about, you know, Laguna Beach or, you know, Centennial, those are, in my mind, very dissimilar in terms of the issue we have here with the relative geography of, you know, who's being affected and what influence we can have.
So a couple of things. First, I should have clarified when the slide was up that these are sort of what we're envisioning, because we see this as, how do I put this? So Superior is getting impacted, but there are other, say Jefferson County, Boulder County, there's other cities. Looking at the complaints and the complaint maps from the airport, clearly the impacts aren't just on you. So sometimes there's strength in numbers. So this would all be, everything we're doing would be subject to the town approving it. So if you said, you know what, we want to cut the list right after airport liaisons, we just want you to focus on Superior, great, that's exactly what we'll do. If you wanted us to look at the other cities and say, hey, would you guys like to join this effort and help and sort of have a regional collective voice, we'd pursue that. That's totally at your discretion. As far as the other airports, so in my career, it's the first time that a city or a town has approached, that wasn't an airport operator, right, approached me or any of my colleagues actually to try to address the issue. What I have worked on is a lot of roundtables made up of, similar to Centennial, where there are communities that are not the airport operator, they're impacted by that airport operator. Looking back at Portland and the work I did at Portland International, as you know, Portland Airport borders the Columbia River, and on the other side of that river is Vancouver, Washington. And so a lot of the complaints that they get is, hey, from Washington, why are we getting airplane noise? That's Oregon's airport. Keep the noise in Portland. It's Portland's airport. So the political sort of jurisdictional issues and crossing boundaries and stuff is really what I would say we have experience in. And then the noise issue itself, Most of my work has been in noise programs for airports. So we're kind of reverse engineering. We're not getting hired by an airport right now to say, with the airport saying, hey, we want to fix this noise problem so our communities are happier. We've got a community asking us to sort of nudge the airport.
So we actually need the airport to hire you.
That's up to you. My work is always, like I mentioned, it's encouraging compatibility between the communities and the airport. So whether I'm working on behalf of or paid or hired by one or the other, it's sort of irrelevant to what my goal is, which is compatibility between the two. How can we keep that airport a good neighbor and keep the community quality of life, livable and maintainable?
And that may be actually possible, as we get down the line and engage with the airport and find opportunities for you all to ask of them that, I think it's reasonable and prudent, though, to give us a little bit of a time to establish a relationship with them so that they would know that they would want to hire us, to do that kind of thing. And I think the other thing that he's doing here with this slide is not only is it something that we have envisioned, it's something that we think the airport is going to envision, because it's very difficult for an airport director or the FAA to give priority to one community over another. So suffice it to say, whatever we do here can't negatively impact somebody else. You can't just move noise. You actually have to mitigate it in such a way that you're reducing the impact on a population without moving it from one spot to another.
Squeezing a balloon, basically.
Yeah, that's and that's the hard part. So, and to address another thing about Laguna Beach. Laguna Beach actually is not associated with the airport per se. The difference there is they are in the same county, but this is the problem that we're having with the airspace down there, is that the routes that the FAA has designed do impact multiple communities. And they did the environmental study based on the route that they proposed. And all we really asked them to do was fly the route that you proposed. And, they said, yeah, we'll do that. And so far we've gotten 87% compliance, which is pretty darn good, really, when you take into consideration all the aspects of air traffic and the different possibilities of why they would have to deviate from those routes. So there are other communities surrounding Laguna Beach that we kind of have to take into consideration what's going on with them too. Just like I said, we can't really say, okay, we're going to solve Laguna Beach's problem and not even worry about these folks over here. We can't really do that. It's, it wouldn't be ethical to do that. So, and another one that we have right now is we're working with Seattle. We're not working with the airport, but we're actually working with 4 cities that surround the airport. They have done an interlocal agreement. And so each city has their own unique issues, but they've come together to collaborate via an interlocal agreement to hire us to help them work out those things. So maybe that's a little bit more similar to what we have here. I think it's going to be interesting because it's across county lines and may provide another level of complexity, but I think we'll be able to address that as well.
I appreciate it, and I actually echo some of what Trustee Ryan had said. I think I'm obviously concerned about the budget since, as you said, normally it's an airport that would endeavor to do this, and we're kind of trying to push it from the outside and maybe left holding a really big payable relative to the benefit to all the surrounding towns and communities and even the airport itself. But I think you guys understand that, so thank you.
Ken?
Yeah, so first question, I think, to Matt. In our last meeting as a community with the airport, it was a joint meeting with Louisville. Has there been any communication with Louisville in entering this contract as a joint member?
There's been some initial discussions. Based on what happens tonight, those will become more intense. And also, we've heard from Broomfield residents, Westminster residents, and Arvada residents as well. So there would need to be, I think, discussion with those 3 entities as well.
Okay. I just echo what Trustee Ryan had said. My preference is, clearly, we're not going to just move the noise. We're going to mitigate the noise. So there's going to be a lot of beneficiaries across our region. So for us to hold the entire bag of cost doesn't necessarily make sense in my mind. So the more we can reach out to try to spread this cost, the better, and the more willing I'd be willing to move forward. Jim and Jason, thank you guys very much for coming tonight. To just reiterate what I heard during your presentation, the success of your work is purely going to be based on the willingness and cooperation of Rocky Mountain Airport. Is that true?
And the FAA, ultimately, yes, sir.
And to put it more simply, the solutions that you identify and try to implement are more or less going to be more voluntary than compulsory, based off what those entities agree to, right?
Yes, sir. And I think one of the exercises that we have, and one of the things that we could possibly do with you all, is to do a workshop that will help you identify what the priorities should be, the things that are most important to you, and then compared to the likelihood of success for those types of things. I think that's a way of you all feeling comfortable that you're being frugal with your funds.
So that leads well into my next question. So what you're saying is we could sit down with you and identify how we define the success of this project. My question to you is, hearing what we're interested in, there's concerns in our community with noise. How would you define success, and what would the likelihood of that success being attained actually be?
So we have what we call the NM2 model. It's the NowGen model for noise mitigation. And what we've done is we've set it up in a workshop type format. What we would love to do is actually come in, on a work session with you all, invite who you want, from the city staff, maybe even some of the surrounding communities that you're thinking about having to collaborate with you, and go through this. And with the baseline study that we're doing, once we have that knowledge base, and with the input from you all and the staff and whatever, you have a kind of a prioritization of what you all find as important. And then we go through and say, of these things, which ones are the most doable? And then you define at that point what success looks like. I mean, and one of the things that we try to do is make those definitions meaningful and measurable. We want you to be able to measure the success. So today, can I tell you exactly what that is? Absolutely not, because we don't really have that level of expertise yet. That's what this baseline study is all about, to determine what those things might look like. But that exercise might be something that would be very beneficial and help you to be as frugal as possible.
Okay. I think everything else has mostly been covered. I think, Matt, just my preference going forward, I know there was mention of bringing a contract forward on December 10th. My preference is that it's better to get this done right than quickly. If we can't meet and get buy-in from these other communities and know exactly where they stand and whether they're willing to join us in this effort, by that point, I'd rather push it off just to make sure that we are addressing everything properly. But that's my 2 cents.
Okay, Laura?
So I first want to thank you both for coming in. I'm really excited by the expertise that you're bringing. I would, though, echo Trustee Ryan's comments. I'm a little bit thrown off by the time and materials approach to things rather than fixed fee, particularly given just how vague some of the phases are. Certainly understand that it's exploratory work and that you don't know exactly what you're going to find, but I really like what you said around a workshop for success criteria. So whether it's December 10th, whether it's later on, I just would like to see some more specifics of what each of those phases entail, what sorts of deliverables there might be, workshops, things like that. Again, I know that we don't know the outcomes right up front, but getting an idea of what exactly that work would look like, or even taking the task-based approach where we're checking in periodically on progress, I would really like to see that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any final comments? Okay, thank you both for coming in.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Appreciate it. All right, next on our agenda is item number 3, the consent agenda. We have A, B, C, D, and E. We've pulled item F, which we'll discuss a little bit later, and then G we've moved to combine with item number 7. So do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda A through E?
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Hammerly.
Second.
By Trustee Ryan. All those in favor? Passes
Point of order,
unanimous.
can we have the new trustees vote on the minutes of the previous meeting?
I would say they would abstain from the minutes.
Thought
And
so.
just well, Clint could be, because he is a holdover.
Yes.
The four of you would be.
He was here.
Thank you.
Okay. thank
All
you.
right. All right, so let's redo that. Let's go. How about we vote on 3A, approval of the Board of Trustee meeting minutes? And, well, actually, A and B wouldn't.
I would just say that you're voting on the consent agenda as motioned or moved, with abstentions from the three new trustees on the minutes.
Okay.
That would be fine.
All right, let's do, all right, let's, with that motion,
So moved.
all right, motion by trustee Hammerly, second by trustee Ryan. All those in favor? Passes unanimous with the others abstaining. Okay. All right, on to item F. Trustee Laces.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of us who wanted to pull this contract. I wanted to pull it for a couple of reasons. One being, this was an issue that came up when the three of us, Sandy, Kevin, and I were sworn in, and we wanted to get familiar with the process that the town goes through with bidding out contracts, and then the difference between its obligation to bid contracts versus the ability to renew contracts, and under what circumstances it's appropriate for the town to not rebid something and just renew a contract, which is what we're dealing with here tonight, because Vargas has been a contractor of the town since 2013, and this particular contract was awarded in 2016, correct? And is going to run through 2020, and that's when they'll rebid. So specifically on the adjustment, so the contract for 2018 was $962,000. Now we're looking at 1.077 million. So it's about $110,000 more between 2018 and 2019. And in the staff memo, there is a description that says adjustments to the scope in 2019 include maintenance services for turf care, native care, plant care, flowers, weed control, debris, and litter control occurring at locations around town, including Wildflower Park, town-owned areas near Coal Creek Crossing, Calmonte Open Space, White Raven Parcel, the US 36 Bikeway behind Old Chicago, Village Green Park, and Tract A. And H and A. So first on Coal Creek Crossing, in terms of what the town is taking over, is the town taking over the naturalized, native grass area in the kind of courtyard area between?
No, that'll be an HOA maintenance item.
Okay.
These are mainly right-of-way areas along Coal Creek Drive. And then we also have the 13 acres of open space that we purchased. I don't know how many years ago that was, but that's part of that development.
Okay. And with Wildflower Park, is Vargas taking over the seeding of all the wildflowers?
Yes, that's correct.
And are they aware of the issues that we had with the goldenrod or whatever it was that was taken over over there?
Yes, yep. Yeah.
And are they planning to do different plantings there? Like, I presume that, Patrick, you've been talking to them about it and you've got this all planned out, but I just want to know what the plans are.
And in fairness, Vargas actually discouraged us from doing the initial mow, which kind of led to the wildflower growth. So yeah, and they would be doing that work. Those would be outside the scope of this contract, the seed planting, but the routine maintenance for that park, now that that's off of warranty, the 2-year warranty period on that park is up, that's what's covered under the base contract here.
Okay.
But we typically will have Vargas do those ad hoc projects, which is included in the contract, the materials price and labor price.
So in terms of just explaining kind of the principal drivers of the increase of the $110,000 from last year to this year, what are we looking at? What's the primary
And I
driver?
want to make sure I'm following you, and this may need to kind of go back a couple of years. We used to bring forward to the board an annual flowers contract and a Vargas agreement, and they were two separate items. And a couple of years ago, the board asked that we stop doing that we present a base contract, which is, the 900,000, then the additional flowers contract on top of that. They used to be treated as two separate items. At the board's request, we were told to combine those two and get separate pricing for those. So that overall total is reflective of the annual flower agreement, which is detailed in the back. I personally, I think staff was fine presenting it either way. I think that this does confuse it a little bit by bringing the flowers contract and the annual maintenance agreement together. So just within this contract, you have a baseline of service, you have an annual flower service, and then you have time and material for repairs and snow removal. So you have a bunch of knowns and then some unknowns, and then a whole separate flowers agreement. So what you're seeing today is staff's attempt for the board's request to try to consolidate those variables into one agreement.
Okay, so in 2018, was the flowers agreement
Correct.
separated?
It was.
Okay. And so how much, was it about $100,000?
Yeah,
so it's not a
it's
noticeable change.
The flowers agreement, to Vargas's credit, they have held that number flat at our request, which is roughly 100. And for those of you who've been on the board for a while, that it used to be about 180 to 190,000 just for the annual flowers agreement in town, which is we've worked to try to at least decrease it to that 100 mark.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies it for me. I think Vargas is a phenomenal job. Our town looks like a country club, and it's absolutely beautiful. So I'm in support of moving forward and approving the contract as contained in the packet.
My other question is about tract H and A. Mm-hmm. Which one is A again?
A is the one that sits behind Discovery Office Park.
Okay, and H is
the 17 acres. Right. And the differentiation there is A won't have the irrigation system on it, H does.
What's the approximate cost for adding A and H?
We're going to find out. My guess is with the irrigation alone that we're probably going to be in the 20 to 25,000, based just off of water usage alone, to make sure that that open space establishes the way that the board has asked us to establish it. And that also will factor in probably two to three mows. There was a lot of dialogue with the community at the time that would be cut short native, something similar to what we have on Colton.
Right.
Snow removal, and then we've recently added trash cans, which is kind of a minimal. So my guess right now with irrigation is going to be in that 20 to 25,000 range.
And since that property was ceded to the town a few years ago, no pun intended, there's no argument we could make to put it for TIF reimbursement.
The cost to build it is, and we're tracking the cost for maintenance because there's typically a 2-year warranty period, so that could be included.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. And agree, I think Vargas does a nice job. I see them a lot at the park across the street from me, and I think that park not only looks fantastic, they're friendly guys, and I'm always impressed how they go out of the way to work around kids that are playing ball and do whatever. So the team does a really nice job. So thank you.
Ken?
So I'll echo what Trustees Lasis and Ryan have said. I think Vargas does a great job, and I think just the high quality and beauty of our landscape is one of the things that makes Superior so special. Looking at the cost alone, I think what we're looking at was about a 12% year-over-year increase this year, and I think it was about 27% increase from that 2014 base year contract. Not to say that there's anything particularly wrong with it, but seeing those jumps just initially gives cause for concern. especially knowing that we're going to continue to have more land sent over to us that we're going to have to continue to maintain. I suppose my initial question is just at the highest level, have we budgeted going forward in the out years for this additional amount of maintenance that we'll need to cover?
Yeah, so if you were, I don't remember the exact years, but you'll see spread throughout the typically what we call the 5 classes that we deal with. So landscape fee fund, general fund. I believe around 2021, you'll start to see the town center or downtown parks come online. You'll see some adjustments in water spread throughout the classes. So we have done our best working with Vargas staff to try to get ahead of the curve. The handful of items that have kind of been new to us is trying to figure out the timing of taking over the public improvements that are associated with downtown Superior. So as you guys know, there's these kind of trigger points to when they get turned over to the town. And it's a little bit of a cat and mouse of, okay, are we going to accept it? Do we start paying for it? Do we start maintaining it? And we've actually had an internal dialogue just today about trying to come up with a mechanism to make sure that that's a little bit more clear and understandable when we present it.
Okay. I think one of the things that, not tonight, but when we have our budget meetings at the end of this year, is just maybe a discussion of looking at these increasing costs and discussing whether or not it makes sense to start to rethink the type of landscaping that we have and whether we can still reach the level that the residents have come to expect, but maybe with less organic or high maintenance landscaping and something that's more low maintenance long-term that might make a bit more fiscal sense.
Staff would love that. Staff would support that.
Yeah. And then just a second question, looking at those 5 classes of funds that you mentioned, and Matt, this might be a question for you as well. The landscape fee fund looks like it covers a good chunk of the area. I know that certain parts of Superior are exempt from the landscape fee fund going forward. Are all of our additional developments going to be included paying into that fund, and will that continue to cover the necessary expenses that we anticipate going forward, or are we going to have to start seeing a deficit in that fund to cover?
The current 5-year plan does cover those costs, but at some point there may need to be a discussion about other ways, either reduction in services or other revenue sources. But new development is included in that landscape fee.
Okay.
But Coal Creek Crossing was not.
It's the one that got away.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Neil?
I just want to clarify, because I thought I understood the numbers when Mark or Trustee Lasis asked them, but then Ken threw me off. So on its face value, it looks like a 12% increase year over year, but I think what you said earlier is we're looking at, say, a 3% increase for COLA, and the rest of it was already bid out for the, I mean, it would have been the other flower contract anyways. We just portioned the two together. So realistically, it's not what looks like a 12% year over year increase. It's probably a 3%, 4% increase just on a COLA basis.
That would be correct. And then you will have the anomaly bump of like a wildflower park, or in this case, us getting roughly 20 acres of open space. Okay. So, you know, I think we've all kind of seen with especially some of the seasonal staff, and definitely the amazing park staff is doing the 3% increase to make sure that we can get the best of the best in
That's
town.
Outstanding, yeah.
And just a little bit of background is these guys do a great job. We'll get Vargas staff that want to come back year after year after year, and I think that that's a part of it. But really, these kind of, you know, the wildflower parks, when Founders Park came online, you know, we're working on the Creek project. So as soon as the Creek project's done and it's out of warranty, there will be a bump because we'll need to start to maintain the banks of the creek. So it probably kind of ebbs and flows a little bit more than we would like it to. And something, again, that we talked about is maybe trying to visually show that on our class maps, just the growth of the town. You know, if you compare that to 2011, you didn't have Founders or Wildflower Park, you didn't have the 36 bikeway, you didn't have the open space tracks, and maybe making that a little bit easier to understand on our part is something we can work on.
Okay. And I really appreciate it through the election. None of my signs disappeared. They mowed all around them and everything, so.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks. Anything else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve item F.
I'll make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution Number R-63, Series 2018. A resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an agreement with Vargas Property Services, Inc. for landscaping, maintenance, and snow removal services.
Second.
All right, motion by trustee Lasis, second by trustee Hammerly, and we'll need a roll call vote on this item.
Lasis,
Yes.
Hammerly,
Yes.
Folsom,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Skrozinski.
Yes.
Sorry, Laura. Thank you.
Good. Missed me. Yep, but yes.
All right.
No worries.
Item passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, item G, we've moved to item number 7. So we'll move on to item number 4, review of representative and committee assignments.
I had proposed that we
Yeah,
switch.
we moved the Mayor Pro Tem forward.
I thought it was 5 and 6 we were switching, but it was,
Sorry, I did say 5. I did say 5 and 6, but I think 6 needs to come before 4 and 5.
oh boy, man, that's getting confusing. Okay, all right, let's do item number 6, appointing a mayor pro tem.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. So section 2250 of the code states that the board shall, at its first meeting, elect one member of the board as mayor pro tem, who in the absence of the mayor or upon his or her inability to act shall perform the mayor's duties. I would recommend that any trustee that's interested in serving as mayor pro tem announce their interest to serve. And then once the board is aware of the trustees willing to serve in this position, the mayor can ask for a show of hands supporting those interested, and then a motion can be made at that point.
All right, thanks.
Well, I'll throw my name in the hat. I'm interested in serving as Mayor Pro Tem. I don't know if anybody else is, but I'm dedicated to this community and want to lead it forward. We get so many things that are thrown at us while we're here on the board that it's easy to just be reactive. And when we're constantly reacting to all the things that come our way, we lose focus. And I think we need somebody who's goal-oriented, who brings us back to help us get big things done so we can be proactive and lead us forward to being the best town that we can be. People who identify goals, prioritize, and execute on those goals, and ultimately deliver results. And that's what I've tried to do since I've been on the board for the past 2 years. I'm proud of the things that we've accomplished so far, and I want to be really proud of the things that we've accomplished, and for all of us on our terms here on the board, so we can look back on the time that we've spent on this board and conclusively state that this town is a better place because of the things that we've accomplished. So I believe in goal setting, and I believe that the mayor and the mayor pro tem should be constantly focused on bringing the board's focus back to these goals, and I would be honored to have your support.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any other trustees that would like to be considered?
I'd like to throw my name in the hat, too. I've served the town for the last 10 years, first as a volunteer, as an officer of one of our largest HOAs, as a committee leader, and for the last 2 years as a trustee. I can think of absolutely no reason whatsoever why I would ever have to recuse myself from any discussion. I have been a participant in First Friday Communication Forum, which has been a huge opportunity for us to engage on a regular basis with our residents. And I've Sorry, my bad. I have been very proactive in working with all of our advisory committees and have, despite the little chart that Laura put together, I have spent more time attending meetings on behalf of the town than any other trustee over the past 2 years, particularly in the last several months. I have a commitment to help the mayor by assisting with things like ribbon cuttings and meetings, attendance with the second graders, and I do all this, all the things that I've done over the past several years, I've done while maintaining a full-time job and basically maintaining a household by myself. Prior to being a part of the town of Superior, I have significant experience leading boards as the executive director, running board meetings for national nonprofits. And so I've got goal-setting experience, helped to establish the largest strategic plan ever for a national governing body. So I'd like you to consider me as your mayor pro tem. And either way, you don't lose. So thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Sandy. Yes, we have two good choices. Do we have any other choices? All right, would it be appropriate to, yes?
I am not putting my hat in.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. All right, would it be appropriate at this time to call for hand raises for each individual that's interested?
You could call for a hand raise and then kind of wait for somebody to make the motion as to approval for Mayor Pro Tem, based on the hand raising.
Okay.
And majority hand raising.
All right. Let's just take them in order of which they offered up to serve as Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor of Trustee Lasis as Mayor Pro Tem, please raise your hand. Lish, Skwacinski, Folsom, and Lasis. All those in favor of Hammerly as Mayor Pro Tem. Hammerly, Shaw, and Ryan.
And in light of that, I'll make a motion that we have Trustee Lasis as our new Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, motion by Trustee Hammerly, second by Trustee Ryan. All those in favor of? All right, that passes unanimous. Congratulations, Mayor Pro Tem Lasis.
Thank you.
All right. We've now completed item number 6. Now, should we go to 4 or 5? Either one. Okay. Let's do 4, since it's before 5. All right, review of representative and committee assignments.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, at the first meeting of a new board, I like to go through the various committee assignments and board representatives that we have in town for our advisory committees, but also those committees that we serve outside of town on intergovernmental committees. I've prepared a list of committees that we serve on, both as a staff and as board liaisons. I included, and Trustee Hammerly left, but she pointed out that all these are open to the board. I included those that have been serving on those committees over, the past year or two, just so you would have that information. Any ones that are open are no longer, were served by trustees that are no longer on board. So that's why they're vacant. And so I guess what I'm saying is these are open to everybody. The one exception I would say is the Mayor's Commissioners Coalition and the Metro Mayors, usually is the mayor and the Mayor Pro Tem. So that's kind of the one exception to that. I would say otherwise it's open to what interests the board members have on serving on these. And we can answer any questions you might have about any one of these committees as far as time and any of the roles that they play. So we can start from the top if you like, if you want to wait for Trustee Hammerly to get back. Or however you'd like to proceed.
Yeah, we have the staff memo, and then we have a spreadsheet. Does the board have a preference on which format we'd like to use to go through them? I mean, they kind of contain the same information, but
I say, do they go in the same order?
Okay. Okay, so let's just go in that order. Sandy, we were just saying that what we've, everything is open for discussion on all the assignments, so.
Sorry, just had to take a break.
Understand. Okay. So Boulder County Consortium of Cities.
So I've really been the alternate here. I've got a lot of passion around this. Some of the areas around affordable housing, homelessness, the creation of the opioid task force, all things that are close to my day job and things I have a passion for. So I'd like to continue as the primary representative.
Okay. Alternate?
I'd be willing to be the alternate on that one.
Okay. Any other? Okay. All right.
We'll need, they move the schedule around periodically. There are Wednesdays, which are terrible days for me, so I will occasionally need the alternate, but it's a really good group, and it's important stuff, so thank you.
Okay. The next one that needs representation is Colorado Municipal League, CML's Policy Committee. Trustee Hansen, I think, was our primary on that. I served as the alternate at times and have been to a couple of these meetings. And
when does it meet?
They have about 3 meetings, and they are typically in the middle of the day and the fall. I think there's an October, November, and then maybe a January.
Yeah,
or maybe
typically it's right before the new state legislation takes seat, so they can start talking about issues that they want to propose to the state legislature.
And they're held it's at CML's offices, which is on Sherman Street,
Yeah.
I believe. Yeah.
In Denver?
Denver, yeah. Okay. Very close to your office.
Well, since it's close to my office, I'll take one for the team, and I'll sign up for CML.
Okay. Anybody for alternate? And I'm fine covering as alternate since I've done that before, unless someone else would like to be alternate. Okay, so Mark is primary representative and I'll be the alternate. Okay. Dr. Cog, third Wednesday of the month, 6:30, which reminds me there's one tomorrow.
There is.
It's on my calendar.
Just to clarify, so Laura, the spreadsheet you put together shows 2 meetings per month.
So I did not put this together.
I put it together, actually.
Mark, you show 2 meetings per month.
There's another, they have all these subcommittees as well.
So they have
Finance committee, yeah.
They have a work session, which is the first Wednesday of the month at 4 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
You can appear telephonically. And then the board meeting is the third Wednesday of the month at 6:30, I believe.
Yes.
That's in Denver. Separate from that, there are additional committees within Dr. Cog. Like there's a member outreach committee and a finance committee and things like that, which I believe are voluntary. They're not mandatory. I believe Rita participated in some of those as well. And then separate and apart from just the board of directors meeting for Dr. Cog, there are these sub-regional groups within Dr. Cog.
Mm-hmm.
So we are in the greater Boulder sub-region, so Longmont, Boulder, Lafayette, Louisville, Erie, Superior, and they meet periodically, and the purpose of those sub-regional groups are to pick projects that they want to submit to Dr. Cog for, not just municipal projects, but they're regional focused projects or sub-regional focused projects.
Okay, do we have a taker for Dr. Cog? Don't everybody jump at once. This is a good one. It really is. And Rita was a great representative on this.
So Dr. Cog is a large time commitment.
Yeah.
And, my concern with Dr. Cog is I really want to be on the Rocky Flats Stewardship Council. And I believe that, and that's also a pretty heavy lift, so I don't think I could do now the Municipal League, the Rocky Flats Stewardship Council, and DRCOG. One alternative would be if we could split the attendance at DRCOG, so it's not just a complete burden on one individual. I mean, I think that that's just kind of the realities of the board as it's now constituted. We have, everybody has jobs, everybody has families, everybody has jobs that take them traveling, and it's just going to be harder for us to staff committee membership. You know, Rita and Sandy and Chris were able to handle a lot.
Yeah, and to that end, I think if we get to the point where we're finding that it's hard for all of us to cover this, maybe we need to have the conversation about whether we continue to have a full-time member at all of our committee meetings as well, whether we break that to every other quarterly. Maybe we don't have one, we have them present to the board more often, but other solutions to alleviate the additional outside burdens, not burdens, but time commitments.
Right.
Yes.
And I think we should also talk about allowing telephonic participation at committee meetings. You know, something's better than nothing, and if that will enable the people who are traveling for work to actually attend meetings that they otherwise can't, I think that's something that we should look into. But to Ken's point, I guess when I look at these committee meetings, I want, rather than necessarily going down in order, I'd like to know, number one, what's everyone's top priorities and top picks, because I think it's best if people are staffed on the committees that they really want to do. And then we'll see, what remains after. And if there's certain committees that are absolutely critical, then we figure those out. And then if there are committees that maybe don't necessarily require attendance at every meeting, we deal with that last.
Okay.
I might be a little concerned with that approach. So we're picking favorites among committees, then I think every committee deserves the same amount of representation from the board. So we all do have our passions and whatnot, but just to make sure some committees don't get fully ignored, I think is important.
Well, to that end, what you had said earlier about some committees not needing a representative at everyone, I feel strongly that there should be a board representative at every committee. I think otherwise we would be leaving the committees out. But from an approach, I think most people do have their committees that they either were staffed on previously or are already attending. So maybe it does make sense to start with those.
And that's fine. I was just putting it out there if we were running into time commitment issues.
I was just
this
going
was
to
a
say, I'll
solution.
commit to do DRCOG. I will.
Okay.
I actually had cleared it with my boss.
Okay, good.
So moved.
All right.
My microphone's on.
And I'm happy to serve as the alternate on that.
That would be good. And could you do it tomorrow night? Well, the only reason I say that, I actually have another meeting I have to go to tomorrow night.
No problem.
So-
I can do it.
I'm happy to cover tomorrow night as well if that's an issue.
Well, they're tricky the way.
They are tricky, and I think it probably I should cover it because you have to be like a member.
Okay.
I could also cover it because I think I'm technically a member right now.
You are?
Yeah, so.
You are? You're the primary.
Yeah, because you're the alternate right now.
I think I'm the primary.
He's the primary, I'm the alternate.
Oh, that's right, because you took over.
So I think it should be one of
us. We'll figure it out.
Okay.
I'll commit to do it after
We'll do
that.
rock, paper,
Tomorrow
scissors.
night. I have a relatively messy board meeting at work. I can't miss, so.
Okay, so Sandy will be our new representative, but we'll not notify them till after tomorrow so that we don't throw them off. And Mark and I will do rock, paper, scissors to see who goes tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay,
But you'll be the alternate?
yes,
Going
I'll be the
forward,
alternate
okay.
going forward, yes. All right, and then as far as these other committees on DRCOG, I guess we could have that, offline, we can have.
Yeah, if you and I
because
could talk
Rita-
about it, maybe we
yeah,
could get Rita engaged in it too, to find out what makes the most sense from us. I definitely have an interest on
Okay,
the area on aging stuff, but.
all right, let's cover that offline, okay. Then library.
Throw my name in there as
I'm happy to give it up to you. Somehow I think I just committed myself.
I'm also very interested in doing the library.
Okay, so Neil, Laura, or Laura, Neil?
Fight it out.
It actually doesn't matter. I mean, we'll probably both attend them, so go down as a rep if Laura's okay with being an alternate.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm sorry, who's the alternate?
I'll be the alternate.
Laura. Okay, and Rocky Flats, Stewardship Council.
So I'd like to be the primary.
I'd like to be the alternate unless anybody else would like to.
I'm also interested in doing it as well.
And they are open to, I mean, everybody that wants to attend, it's open to everybody that wants to attend.
So they meet 5 times per year. 5 times per year, February, April, June, September, November, the first Monday of the month at 8:30 a.m. And it's a 3.5-hour meeting. So it's not totally ideal for, people who have jobs, but it is what it is. It's at Rocky Mountain Airport.
Yeah, I have the flexibility to meet all those time frames, as well as just the background of being involved with the Rocky Flats Stewardship Council and getting their updates for the past 4 years through OSAC, being on their listserv and staying engaged with the Rocky Mountain Greenway. So I think this falls well within.
Okay, so is everybody good with Mark as primary, and then which one of you wants to be the alternate, Ken or Neil?
I think we could, I mean, based on what Mark just said, I think we might get away with 2 alternates, because if anything, maybe all 3 of us could show up for a lot of these meetings.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything
Let's put it
against
down
doing
and.
They're not one of the ones that are picky at all, if the 3 of us show up.
Actually,
I was going to say, I remember Sandy Pennington
yeah,
mentioning.
the IGA, I think, specifically lists a primary and an alternate.
Yeah,
For
and
each
the alternate doesn't
government
get.
agency. Yeah, and only one person votes
Yeah.
at the meetings.
But both do get to sit at the, I mean, it's not like you're sitting back in the kids' seats. My understanding is both of you do, 2 people do get to sit at the table from.
Well, the primary and the alternate.
Yeah.
So, okay.
In this case, my only desire to be associated with is I grew up downwind of that damn place. I just want to make sure it's taken care of. So you guys, I can trust it's in good hands. So I'll let Ken be the alternate, and I'll just yell and scream at him in the background.
For those that aren't aware, they do a tour in June every year, a tour for elected officials.
Great.
And people that are on the Stewardship Council. I've been on it twice, and very informative. So just keep an ear to the ground. And those that are,
Was it really in June?
yes.
Mark, can you let us know when that's coming up?
But year I did it.
For next
So.
Yeah, so the reps and the alternates, just be sure to, Joe Sorelli was always good about letting us know about that. And so that's, just make sure that word gets around, and they're happy to take as many as would like to go. But it's very informative to see it firsthand. Okay. Rocky Mountain Airport.
This is
new committee representative.
I have committee. It's not a committee necessarily, but identifying 1 or 2 board members that want to be involved in the ongoing work and discussions with the airport.
To me, this almost feels premature. I'd like to, since we're engaging a consultant, we're going to have a set of recommendations.
Yes.
I agree.
I think we
can always bring this back.
Bring it back.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, Superior Louisville Joint Issues Committee.
I'd like to do that one.
Okay. Alternate or
Just a
2
question.
representatives?
Is that typically on Wednesdays? It says the next one's on Wednesday, but I'm not clear on what it.
That's how the past elected officials for Louisville and Superior worked in their schedule, but really any day of the week is open.
I'll throw my hat in the ring for that.
Okay.
Is it really tomorrow?
Is it
No, it's not tomorrow. Sorry.
All right, Sandy and Neil. Rocky Mountain Fire.
This is,
New.
Chief Tom Bellato and I had some discussions recently about possibly doing a similar committee that we do with the city of Louisville, which I think has really helped with our relationships with the city of Louisville and working out issues and projects. The chief, I don't think, had a chance to talk to his board before he left the country, and Sterling might be able to give us some thoughts on it, but this was my recommendation to the chief. He was open to it, but needed to talk to his board. So
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. I think we should definitely pursue it. I just want to be careful. It's, you know, we're building a bridge,
Right.
But we can only build it halfway. We need
Right.
them. So I just don't want to go too far with the creation of a committee or send a message that we're creating a committee
Right.
without, because it's two parties. And so even the idea that it's two board representatives and the town manager, and maybe it would be two representatives from their board and the chief or one of the or the deputy chief. Who knows what this will look like?
Right.
I love the idea of this. I'd like to be involved. I think it probably will take a couple board members. I just want to make sure that we do not send the message to Sterling or to Chief Mike that we have this baked, because we don't.
Right.
We just know we want to increase the level of collaboration, and so, but I have some passion about this, obviously, and would love to continue to work with.
So what I could do is I could circle back with the board on this one after I talk to Sterling and Chief Tom Bellato, and if they seem interested, then we can identify who wants to be involved, and if that's okay with the board.
Sounds great.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, Transportation Safety Committee. We have two that have been on there. Do they want to remain? And
Well, so
are all new?
I've brought up before that, so I've really enjoyed serving on the Transportation Safety Committee. I'd like to continue, but I would like to see Transportation Safety Committee become a citizen-led committee and citizen-comprised committee, just like all of our other advisory committees. I also think that it should, meet monthly, and, I'd be happy to lead that effort and serve as the liaison. This might be a question that's really, better suited for a work session and, our strategic planning when we start, in a month or so. I just don't think that the Transportation Safety Committee meets enough. Right now it's meeting quarterly. And I think we're just leaving experience, expertise in the community. We're not taking full advantage of the resources that we have available to us in our community. So I'd like to experiment with the committee and change it and see if we can make it better.
I would completely agree with that. As someone who's presented to the TSC before, it's frustrating to have to wait 3 months in order to get your recommendation heard. I would love to see it be monthly, and I also see no reason why it should be different from our other committees that are citizen-led and with a liaison.
So on the cadence issue, maybe this is a work session thing, right? Because I'm worried about the time. On the cadence, I agree we can increase the cadence. I think quarterly is challenging. I think we definitely had issues that have sat around for longer than anybody would have liked, because we don't have another TSC for another couple months. So whether or not it's monthly, bi-monthly, or just as needed, I agree we need to look at the cadence. In terms of, what I really like about the Transportation and Safety Committee is the ability to make decisions and get things done. And I'm not suggesting that the community-led committees and subcommittees can't do that, but this is transportation and safety was something that was frankly not highly functioning before we joined, Mark, right? In previous years, it didn't meet, they weren't getting things done. It is a really highly functioning committee. We've done great things. We've made some important decisions, and we've known when to not make those decisions and bring them to the board. And we had the appropriate background, and we pushed on Alex, and pushed on staff to get additional data. So I think there's an element to this that is broken, and that is the cadence, but there's an element of this that's really working, which is a subset of this board who is empowered to make some decisions without dragging our Monday night meetings that much longer. And if it's a citizen-led committee, then this board's going to be making decisions on stop signs and flashers, and that's a challenge to me, right? So I like the way the board functions today, although I agree with the cadence.
I think what you said about effectiveness makes sense, but in that case, I'd propose, what if we make this a monthly meeting that is citizen-led, and once a quarter, it's joined by some subset of the board to make those final decisions?
I'm still concerned with it being citizen-led at all. I like the idea of it being board-led. If we see anything with, for example, Waldona, we know that transportation issues are highly contested, can get very heated, and are probably the most important things that come up on a day-to-day basis within our town. I think being able to act quickly with board members being the members is important. I think even if we just have a liaison or 2 liaisons, I mean, come every few months, that's still not going to necessarily get the job done. I think if we make this maybe bi-monthly to make it a bit more timely, would fit the needs, but I don't think we're responsive enough if this becomes a citizen-led committee.
I guess I'm confused. What makes the Transportation and Safety Committee different from the other committees? I think our residents that lead those committees are very effective. I agree with Trustee Ryan's point that sometimes they have to take it back to the board, but I don't want to say that our citizens can't be effective.
No, and that's not what I'm saying either. I'm saying purely it comes down to being the decision-making authority. They don't have the authority to be able to give the town manager or his staff direction to go forward on certain projects. I mean, for instance, I believe the stop signs over on Pitkin, that went directly from the committee to staff and was implemented. Citizen-led committees can't do that. It's going to have to come back.
Well, we could do that.
Yeah,
we could give them.
We could approve that.
I think in the about that, they're not elected officials. That's a very big, important decision that could end up pushing communities in the wrong direction.
In the interest of time, why don't we table this? I mean, good points on all sides, but I think it deserves more discussion. So let's.
I was just going to say that I can put this on as a retreat topic in our next retreat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
Good with that?
But in the interim, I'm happy continuing to serve on the TOC.
Yeah, I love it. So.
And I would very much love to join.
As would I. Yeah, same here.
Okay, let's table. Yeah, let's see. We're going to need to do some.
Well, do you want to table the?
Well, let's keep it. I propose we keep it as is. Maybe we do rock, paper, scissors, or flip a coin for who gets added. Mark and I keep it. Maybe there's some privilege with that. And then flip the coin for the third. And then if we propose to change it, then we'll revisit the committee makeup, because we probably don't need 3 people if it's a citizen.
Correct.
Right.
That makes sense?
So who's interested? Ken, Laura, Neil? Well, Mark and Kevin will give them, because they're
All 3 of the new trustees.
Okay. Why don't we just offline, we'll draw names out of a hat.
If there's 4 of them?
3.
Okay.
Pick an M&M color,
I'll take
brown, blue, or green.
Blue.
Green. Who picked green?
We both did at the
Oh my
same
God,
time.
okay.
I didn't even know what game was going on over here.
Okay.
All right.
Neil, you pick
Do you
first.
want-
Blue, brown, or green?
Whichever one you want.
I'm going to go with brown.
I will be blue.
Green.
That would make you green. Clint, pick. Don't.
Can I eat it? Just drop it.
Not if it does Kevin's hands.
Green.
Green.
All right.
You eat it. Okay. All right. Glad we got that figured out. Okay. I think you should do all votes in the future. Phyllis with M&Ms. Kevin will hold them. Okay, moving right along. We're on to advisory committees.
Yes.
Keep those M&Ms handy. All right, OSAC.
So I've enjoyed my time on OSAC, but I was actually thinking of giving that up. I don't know if Ken wanted to continue working with OSAC, but I was looking actually at the Youth Leadership council. So I was thinking about jumping in with them instead, so.
Okay.
I'm not interested in being the OSAC representative, mostly just because I've lived OSAC for 5 years. I think it'd be better served for the board to have somebody else become more familiar with the duties and roles of OSAC and more familiar with their work rather than me continuing that.
That's good. Okay.
Well, I'm just going to throw in there that unfortunately, if I do Dr. Cog, I have to give up ProStack because they're on the same night. So that throws ProStack. This is breaking my heart officially, but I have to give up ProStack. So if nobody else is interested in OSAC, I have kind of developed a relationship with them because I've gone the last couple of times for Mark, and I'd be happy to do that one if nobody else has an interest in it.
Okay.
And I'm personally holding out for CAPS if I could have a strong alternate. So since everybody else, you just got some preferences there, so.
So CAPS was my first preference as well. Sorry. You'll get this out. So where I struggle with some of these is it's very difficult for me to make meetings on Tuesdays and Wednesday nights, given my travel for my full-time job. So I was looking primarily at the committees that meet on Thursdays.
There's one on Fridays, too.
And Friday, the Historical Commission, yes.
Okay, so alternate for OSAC.
I'll be Sandy's alternate.
Okay. All right, ProStack.
I think I can probably do alternate for ProStack.
Would they change their meeting night, Patrick?
That would help.
I think another possible retreat topic is for the board to have a discussion if you want a board member to attend every committee meeting that you're assigned to, or what your preference is there. So I'm going to have that as a retreat topic as well. So.
Do we also want to have a conversation about merging ProStack and OSAC again?
Yeah.
It's just.
Heather?
We haven't talked about it in a couple weeks.
I don't care, Clark. As long as they don't meet on Wednesday.
I'm not advocating, I'm just saying, do we want to have that conversation? I'll just leave it out there. We can move on.
Yeah, let's, maybe the second quarter we'll deal with that, or can bring that up sometime in between. I would be.
If they'll change, I'll keep it, but I can't do it in, because I do love my ProStack, so.
I'll just, I think for the sake of keeping all of them on the same train, we'll probably should keep that. Keep ProStack's meeting the same night. So who's up for ProStack? And alternate?
I think I'll do alternate for ProStack.
You'll do alternate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Might it be better if we just go through what we are interested in and then see what's left and then maybe from there? Would that be easier for everybody?
Sure.
Might show.
All right. Aces?
So my preference is Historical Commission, if that's.
Okay.
See if anybody else is interested.
I was interested in that as well. But...
Rock, paper, scissors.
Or M&Ms.
I can be your alternate, that's fine.
Do you want to do that?
Yeah, that's
sure.
fine.
Okay, so historical, we've got Ken.
Ken, and then I'll be the
Laura.
alternate.
Okay.
Okay, we got historical done. Others, Mark, you mentioned youth.
Yeah, I'll take youth leadership.
That's great. Thank you.
Alternate?
It's big, thank you.
Alternate?
Above it.
Okay.
First Wednesday, no, that's my that first Wednesday is Consortium of Cities.
Okay, so scratch alternate.
Yeah, I don't think I should do it. If I'm available,
I can take alternate on that because I'll be driving my son.
So you pick up your son
I'll
anyway.
be driving my son a lot of times or picking him up. Okay, good with that? So Mark, Clint? Youth. ACES, CAPS, and then ProStack primary is what's left.
I think Kevin and I said we're both interested in CAPS.
Okay.
I mean, Kevin's been on the board, so I'll defer to him.
It's gonna, with both our travel schedule, be a challenge, so we'll figure it out. How about that?
That sounds good.
It's really of no preference to me whether or not I'm the primary liaison or secondary. I'm gonna go when I can, and I suspect you're gonna do the same.
Yep,
so.
exactly.
Okay.
So that works.
Just put Kevin, Laura. Is that good?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And then I know Sandy had also mentioned the First Fridays earlier. I'd like to join her in hosting those.
Okay.
Does that normally get just passed around also? I know it got passed around a little bit last session.
Pretty much Sandy Pennington was doing it, and I was covering for her when she wasn't doing it. So she just passed it on to me, but I think Laura and I can get it covered.
I can help out whenever you guys aren't available. I plan on attending.
I go when I can.
Exactly.
Great.
Okay. All right, we have ACES and ProStack primary.
Thursday.
ACES has been attended by staff for the most part, just because of the meeting time has been hard for the board members that were liaison and alternate. It starts at 5:30, which is earlier than any of the other committees, just for background information.
I'll move myself up to primary for ProStack.
Okay. All right. ACES.
I'm interested in being on ACES, but I don't know if I can commit to being the primary full-time. Nobody else can do it. I might not be able to attend every meeting, but.
Yeah. Let's just put you down for it. That's what alternates are for. Alternate. So alternate for ProStack, alternate for ACES.
I should be able to do alternate on ProStack. Probably the light one.
Okay. Alternate ACES. Anybody?
We can come back to that.
Okay. All right, we'll just put Ken down for that. Okay. Ken, you'll be the alternate too. Thanks.
Double
All
duty.
right. Yeah. Okay, that covers that. Next is item number 5, review of organizational issues, the 2019 calendar, retreats, meetings off, etc.
And this is something I would like to go over with the new board as well. It should be quicker than the last item we went through, I would imagine. Just so the board knows, we do meet on the second and fourth Monday. It's in the code. That doesn't mean we have to meet on Monday, but in talking to most of the board members, I think Mondays work for everybody. So staff's not proposing any changes, just wants to make you aware of that fact. Work sessions have typically been held the same night as the regular board meeting, either starting at 6 or 5:30. Seems like that works as well for the board. We also do dinners with the advisory committees, and we do those typically the same night of the board meeting, starting at 5:30. Meeting end time has been an informal policy of the board to end at 10:30, depending on the issue, but the board in the past has liked to try to end the meetings by 10:30. Cancel meetings. This is something the previous board had done the last couple of years, where they identified meetings for the upcoming year that they knew that they wanted to cancel, just so everybody had advance warning and could schedule around that. And typically they've been the week of spring break for the Boulder Valley School District, a summer break, which is usually a June or July month. Thanksgiving week has been a discussion, and then the second meeting in December has typically always been canceled because it usually falls around Christmas. So that would be, I guess, the first discussion for the board is if you want to identify meetings to cancel in advance.
I'd like to keep our moving the post-Thanksgiving meeting to the Tuesday, which enables people who travel to make the meeting and us to get Wayne's for dinner.
I like that tradition. So,
Are there any others that are similarly moved or just that one?
so, well, going back to March, the spring break,
The whole 24th.
the 25th would be a meeting night, and that does fall on the spring break. Last year, or this 2018, it did not, but this time it does. So I would propose that we cancel March 25th.
That makes sense.
Everybody good with that?
Yep.
Okay, so March 25th, cancel. And then for a summer meeting, we have canceled the second meeting in June or one in July. We've done both. And it just kind of depended on what people's primary, travel plans were, desires were. Last year, or this 2018, I think we did the second meeting in June. So
I'm fine with either way, but for 2019, July 4th falls on a Thursday, so I don't know if that will mean some people do go away for the weekend.
yeah, so the regular July meeting would be July 8th.
Monday the 8th, yes.
Yes.
I will not be here on June 24th, so I will miss that meeting. So if you were doing the second, if you were choosing one to cancel, it was either July 8th. I'm sorry, you'd probably normally cancel July 22nd or June 24th, if I understood what you just said, although Laura is now suggesting that maybe we look at July 8th.
More, so I know I'm always here for the 4th of July. I love our festivities, but I know some people do go away that weekend.
Yep.
I have no plans, though it's my anniversary, so.
You do have plans.
I do have plans, but we'll work it out. My preference would be if we're canceling a summer meeting, my personal preference would be June 24th, just because I know I won't be able to make it, but I'm 1 of 7. I don't know if other people have their summer schedules available.
Not made yet.
I won't be able to make August 26th, but I think it's after back to school this year.
Yep.
I think, Kevin, if you have a conflict on a date and nobody else has a specific conflict, let's just do it. Cancel
June 24th.
June 24th.
Yep.
Okay, June 24th. All right, then that takes us up to November. Now, November is kind of unique because
This is good. Thanksgiving's
You're-
gonna be the 28th, right?
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, it's,
Oh, that's weird. So there's no school the week of the 25th.
right.
BVSD.
And there's no meeting the Monday after Thanksgiving. It's the first. So we messed that whole thing up.
So you
Sorry.
move
We should still move a meeting to Tuesday. So we can get Wayne's.
Okay, let's not make it too complicated. All right, so November's,
Nothing to do.
so we keeping November 25th? Or do we take that off because it's
No, it would be
kind of a
November 18th. No, you're right, I'm sorry. It's
November 25th?
No.
Should we take that off because school's out that week and a lot of people are off that week?
Yeah, I'm likely to be out on the 25th just because of BVSD week.
Yeah, I'd like to be off November 25th.
So moved.
Okay, November 25th off.
On November 11th is Veterans Day and staff has holidays, so do we want to do that on the 12th?
November 12th, it's a Tuesday. There we go.
Wednesday.
Can we move it
Wednesday.
to the week before or after, so it's on a Monday still?
We have the same issue with, is it Memorial Day?
Memorial Day, we do the day after Tuesday.
Sorry.
Can we switch weeks rather than moving it to a Tuesday? Okay.
Probably not. Okay, November 12th. So November 11 meeting is now November 12th.
And what was the other date that we're moving for holiday?
Memorial Day.
What's that day?
It would be May 28th.
So May 27 is May 28. All right, May 27 to May 28. Okay.
Okay.
And then December. And we'll take the 23rd off.
Yeah.
Okay.
So no March 25th. We're moving May 27th to May 28th. No June 24th. No November 25th. And no December 23rd, right?
Sorry, can you say that again more slowly?
No March 25th.
Yes.
May 27th is moved to May 28th. No June 24th. No November 25th. And no December 23rd.
And November 11th is moved to the 12th because of Veterans Day.
Yes.
So since we're canceling the 25th of November, would it make sense to move that meeting from the 12th to the 18th so it's dead even in the middle of that 6-week stretch? Rather than, 10 days and then a couple weeks? No? Okay. I will have to miss that one, but.
So you're saying split the difference between,
Between October 28th, which is, and
And that's because you travel
December
for work
9th.
on Tuesdays?
Yes.
Okay. I'm fine with moving the November 12th meeting to November 18th.
Yeah, I'd probably prefer that. I mean, I don't have a client meeting on, I don't currently have a client meeting scheduled that day, but as a rule, I prefer Mondays over Tuesdays, so.
I mean, if we're canceling a meeting anyway, that's where I think split the difference.
I'd be good with that. But is that disruptive, Sandy, or?
Well, you don't have to go to Dr. Con that week. I'm just saying,
Right.
having 2 long meetings in 1 week is good, but we'll do it.
We'll make it short.
Maybe
Go
there'll be a
fast.
Monday night football game in.
okay.
So 11/11 is now 11/18.
Yeah.
All right, so November 11 to November 18. All right, and then that's it for days off. So retreats, we've typically done those quarterly, and sometimes we've done them on the same day as meetings, but that makes for a really long day. But it's more convenient because everybody's here, but it makes for a really long day. I kind of like them better when they're on an off Monday.
I agree.
In the first quarter, if we can
Especially for the
if we
first
can get good attendance at that.
I agree.
Okay. And were we doing it the first Monday of the quarter? Was that the procedure?
Well, there had been some indication that the board would like to have it sooner rather than later.
Yes.
December 3rd might be a little too soon, but maybe December 17th, I don't know. I mean, we have our meeting on December 10th. We don't have the second meeting in December. Otherwise, it would be in January, at, January 7th or.
I'd like to go ahead and do it on the 17th if we can get good attendance there. I think this piece with the Chamber of Commerce.
I won't be able to make it if it's before 6. I mean, I can make an evening retreat, but I can't make it.
We can start at 6 or later.
Others?
I'm fine with that.
December 17th.
17th or the 3rd is fine.
Is anyone traveling around the Christmas holiday and not going to be around on the 17th?
I would prefer the 3rd. The 17th is going to be messy for me. But
I have no preference.
I can do the 3rd.
I'm indifferent as well.
Is that,
I can do the 3rd.
does that work?
Yep.
Matt, can you guys turn the agenda around by the 3rd?
Okay.
What time?
Oh, yeah.
It's Hanukkah.
Which one is Hanukkah, the 3rd or the 17th?
3rd.
Do we want to do then the 17th? at
the
6?
3rd's too fast. Just do the 17th.
I'm okay with the 3rd. I was just observing that I had Hanukkah on my calendar.
No, it's a really fast turnaround for Matt and them for an agenda. So, I mean, that's 6 days from now.
I mean, I guess starting at 6 p.m. on the 17th sounds okay. We have plenty of time.
Let's do that. December 17th, 6 p.m.
Okay.
I don't think I had anything else on this item.
Then I like those
Okay.
Google calendars you guys do for the other ones.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
All right, so first retreat, so that will essentially kind of be our first quarter retreat.
Yep.
And then we'll roll to the first Monday of each quarter.
It's the first Monday of the month of each quarter.
Yes.
essentially. Okay.
Okay.
So that would make.
And will those still be at the 6 o'clock time?
Not necessarily.
That would be April Fool's Day.
We've had some
We'll do the-
retreats in the middle of the day, too. We've done in the mornings and the afternoon.
The item that Trustee Ryan mentioned, the survey, we'll send that out to the board to identify the time.
Okay, the doodle surveys,
Yeah, doodle poll.
not Google surveys.
Whatever it is, it works.
Okay. All right, we're on to item number 7, discussion of a comprehensive strategy regarding oil and gas and other issues. And we've rolled 2 things into this item. We've rolled this adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with Matt Sura, special legal counsel. We're going to discuss that in here. And then we've tabled item number 8, adoption of an ordinance for temporary moratorium, but we are going to discuss the idea of a moratorium within 7. So that's where we are.
And
to lead off.
a couple of things. Tim Gablehouse, our special counsel that's helped us with Rocky Flats issues is here. Matt Sura is also here. Thank you. Does the board mind if Deputy Folden leaves? And unless you want to stick around for this discussion, but. Okay. But.
Well, thank you for coming.
No, thanks for coming. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. So I'm not sure how you'd like to proceed with this topic. If you'd like an update from either one of our council or open it up to the board, or how you'd like to proceed with this.
I think a quick update from council.
Yeah, we'll start with
would
Tim,
be good.
I think. And then Matt.
Yes, we'll do Tim and then Matt.
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome, Tim. Thank you.
So Tim Gablehouse with Gablehouse Granberg. We're representing the town in litigation against U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service regarding the opening of Rocky Flats trails. Primary theory of the complaint is filed is it's a failure to comply with the National Environmental Protection Act, NEPA, and do an environmental impact analysis of the larger project, which is greenway trails, crossings, visitor center, and a whole variety of things that kind of come along for the ride. Yesterday was the deadline to confer on the administrative record with the government. We have not reached concurrence with the government on the contents of the administrative record. That is hardly a surprise. This is an administrative record review case. The standard is whether they're arbitrary and capricious. The government likes to define the administrative record so that it only contains things that they like, rather than other information. So we will probably be filing a motion with the court to expand the record, primarily to include things that we believe they've left out that deal with other aspects of the decisions they've made. File that motion, it'll be due the middle of next month. The government's response to that motion would be due right after New Year's. Our reply would be due the end of the 21st. As it stands now, our opening brief in the case is due the 16th of January. That will probably slide if we have an ongoing dispute regarding the administrative record, because you can't really brief it if you don't know what the record is at this point. So that will probably slide. My guess is that might move until mid-February. For our opening brief, the government gets basically a month after our opening brief to respond. We reply after that, and then it's up to the court to make a decision at that point. We do have a variety of FOIA requests and Open Records Act requests that are pending regarding a variety of issues surrounding these deals. Anything entertaining we get out of those responses, we'll forward and make sure you all see right now. Some of the recent FOIA requests we've made dealt with correspondence between Mr. Lucas and the proponents of the oil and gas project and others, just to see what's there. I don't know what might be there, but I believe that there is in fact correspondence. He was discussing those projects, and it would be really interesting to know what he had in mind. With that, and with the understanding we're not in an executive session, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate the update. Thank you. Matt?
Matt Sura, oil and gas attorney. The update, as you know, is that all permits have been pulled. Nothing is currently pending. There are no spacing applications pending in Jefferson County or in Superior or nearby Superior. It took approximately 3 days longer than I thought it would for them to pull those permits. It was a thinly funded corporation that really had been proposing something that was physically impossible in an area that would have been politically unfeasible. So I'm glad that all the 100 or 200 people that filled this room don't have to be concerned about this issue, particularly in Rocky Flats. However, oil and gas development continues, and there's a number of proposals in Boulder County as close as just north of here, frankly, in Gun Barrel. They're now, I just heard today that there is a community in Gun Barrel that is receiving lease offers. So, I can't tell you if this will come again. I hope that it doesn't.
Okay. Thanks for that update. Sure. We certainly recognize it's not gone away, and we want to have, as part of our efforts moving forward, discussions about what can we do to prepare for the eventuality that it could come back. And so to that end, would this be an appropriate time to maybe talk with Matt about his engagement
yeah, I think so.
with the town? Okay.
Can we ask questions first?
Absolutely, yeah.
So Matt, I wanted to understand, you had said that part of why you think this was pulled was because they weren't adequately funded. Do you believe that if a drilling company came in that did have a lot of money, that they would be able to move forward with drilling under Rocky Flats?
There are a lot of ifs in that.
Of course.
And my sense is that it wasn't the funding that failed this project. It was just poorly conceived. It was rushed to beat what they thought was a threat for 112, Proposition 112. And frankly, they didn't do their homework. They didn't talk to the appropriate federal agencies. They didn't talk to any of the local governments. Having said that, when I talked to the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission staff, they said, looks like their application, fits all our criteria. Really? They were proposing something that literally was impossible. The friction that is involved in drilling, and you can drill in this area, the target formations are about 8,000 feet below the surface. You have to have a certain amount of weight to be able to go out the 3 miles that they're now capable of, in our area, in the greater Wattenberg field. They were proposing 5 miles. They were going to go out 2 miles as a kick out and then go an additional 3 miles. And it's just impossible in this area. The laws of physics won't allow it. And the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission didn't care. They said, that's not our problem. That's a drilling issue. We're going to, just take this permit on a face value that they can do it. Bottom line is that the state agency isn't adequately up to the task of protecting local residents' public health, safety, and welfare.
It was my understanding that something called superlateral technology would enable them to go 5 miles. Is that not possible?
It has never been done in Colorado, and the folks that are doing the longest laterals, Extraction Oil and Gas, the one that's causing a lot of the controversy, and from Broomfield to Boulder County, has told me that they see that as absolutely impossible.
Okay, thank you.
So, Matt, first, thank you for jumping in. I know you had other clients and you came up to speed, and your presentation a few weeks ago was great, informative for us, informative for the community, so thanks. I am supportive of a continued engagement, and I guess what judges say, we're a really small town with 4 square miles, and there are current restrictions, probably not enough, but you obviously can't drill on somebody, right on top in somebody's existing residential property, too close to somebody's house. You can't drill right next to a school. There has to be certain setbacks. We're not that big a town. I wouldn't mind having you consult with the staff in coming up with a map saying where are the vulnerable properties within our town. And then as we define those vulnerable properties, and obviously the level 3 CenturyLink property is one, I'm still unclear on who owns, well, who owns the surface rights. That's easy to figure out, but who owns the mineral rights? So I think at a minimum, that feels to me like a worthwhile exercise to bring in an expert. I don't know if you heard earlier, but I do encourage staff when we don't have a particular expertise, and we of course don't have an oil and gas expert full-time on our small staff. So hiring you to advise the staff feels like a no-brainer. And again, my expectation would be identification of the vulnerable areas. What are the strategies that we could deploy to potentially mitigate those vulnerable areas? And I know a temporary moratorium is a strategy. You can't do a permanent moratorium. You will lose that court battle, I understand. And then who owns those mineral rights, and what can we do about acquiring or at least knowledge of those mineral rights? So having some assessment to me feels like it would be important and help me set what that next strategy would be. So welcome to the team, and hopefully we'll get this worked out.
Thank you.
And I'll echo what Trustee Ryan just said. Matt, your participation at that meeting was so beneficial for just our residents to hear that we had somebody like you having, the town's back, having the residents back. It really, I think it set people's minds at ease to just know that we had somebody who was, an expert in the field, who was, able to talk about these things. And, because this is just the first time that we're dealing with this as a town. So it was definitely a terrifying event. I reviewed your engagement letter. I'm totally fine with it. So, I'm happy to make a motion now to approve the resolution appointing Matt as special legal counsel for oil and gas issues, and then we can talk more specifically about kind of the strategy that we're looking to go into without getting too far into stuff that really needs to be talked about in an executive session. Obviously we had the moratorium on the agenda for tonight. It's been tabled. We don't have an application that's pending right now, and any permits are pending right now. But we can have the moratorium as, we still need to develop, obviously, our regulations and our ordinances to appropriately deal with, potential future threats. And, as part of that would be deploying a moratorium at the appropriate time, if necessary. So at this point, I'll make a motion.
I have a question. I want to see if anybody else had any further questions before we go down the motion path. Anybody else have any questions? Go ahead, Neil.
And Matt and I talked about this because for me, it's more a function of who's going to be overseeing Matt, not that Matt, his work. Is it the board? Is it a subset of the board? Is it staff? Does Kendra need to be here to be part of that conversation? No offense against lawyer Matt. I don't want to send you on a fishing trip where you're just off, on your own trying to figure out what needs to get done. I just want to make sure that we box it in. We're not, off in the unknown wild frontier, because what we're talking about here, some of it's going to be new. So I just want to make sure we're cognizant of where the oversight lies.
In my engagement letter, I anticipated that it would be your town attorney.
Right.
And also Matt, of course. Right. But primarily probably Kendra in this case.
Yeah, and it's my understanding that Kendra's in active communication with Matt as well.
Okay, and as long as she's got the bandwidth for it, then I think I'm okay.
Kendra and I got a good relationship, good communication, so I mean, okay. I have no issues with that.
Okay. Matt, I'll echo what Mark said about, your presence at our meeting the other week. It was very reassuring to people to kind of hear the information that you had, and appreciate you getting up to speed so quickly. I've heard from a couple of different sources that you've worked on some oil and gas company projects in addition to working for municipalities. So maybe speak to kind of your past work and in an effort to allay anyone's concerns that, you truly have our interests at heart and not perhaps some other interests as well.
No, thank you for that question, and thanks for being so open about it. I've been doing this work around oil and gas issues since 1997. And I did so as a community organizer working on the western slope of Colorado when the heart of oil and gas activity was in Garfield County. I became an attorney went to law school in 2008 as a second career to be able to help advance the concerns of protecting the environment and protecting communities that were being imperiled by oil and gas development. I've never worked for an oil and gas company. Conflict of interest would prohibit me from, conflict of interest concerns would prohibit me from doing so. And I'm proud to say that I represent only local governments, mineral owners, landowners, and nonprofit organizations. Having said that, there are times when, particularly in Broomfield, and this is where you probably heard this, there were a number of folks who were going to be force pooled, and I arranged for a lease for them. And there is a contingent in Broomfield that felt that that was selling out somehow. I talk to my clients and I tell them very clearly, look, if you're in a position to be force pooled, you have a choice of being a part of the industry, if you get force pooled, actually being a working interest owner in those oil and gas wells that you would abhor, or you can lease and have a kind of a removed interest and participation in that. And if they're going to take your minerals, you better get, it would be my advice to get market value for them. And so, there are some that really were offended by that position or my work on those issues. And I'm sorry for that.
Okay, appreciate that explanation.
Yeah, and force pulling is just, it's not a concept that most people have to deal with, right? Unless you're a mineral right owner. it's not necessarily something that seems like it's consistent with private property rights, right? You know, most people think like, oh, it's my property, you can't take it, but under Colorado law, you can.
I mean, you may come into a place where you own a park and you own both the surface and the minerals. And in that case, if you were faced with that proposition as to whether to be forest pooled or to lease, my advice to you would be like the advice that I've given to all the municipalities and all the school districts that I represent, that you're better off to lease. You have more protections. You're not part of the industry.
Yep. Okay.
So with that,
any other questions? Okay. All right. I'll entertain a
so I'll
motion.
make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution Number R-64, Series 2018, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an agreement with Matthew Sura, Special Legal Counsel.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lacey, second by Trustee Hammerly. And we need a roll call vote for this?
Sure. Folsom?
Yes.
Hammerly?
Yes.
Laces?
Yes.
Lish?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Skwagosinski?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, motion passes. Thank you. All right.
So specifically on kind of the development of our comprehensive strategy. So, and I put together some notes. The way I look at this issue for the Town of Superior, there's obviously the local concern of any oil and gas development that's going to occur within, you know, the confines of our town, right? And then, you know, there are things that we can do to address that, whether that is imposing a townwide moratorium, enacting, you know, specific land use regulations. We heard from Mayor Ahern in Broomfield about some of the air monitoring requirements, setbacks, emergency preparedness plans, you know, all sorts of regulations that, you know, we can look into, we should look into in terms of adequately exercising our police powers as a municipality. Obviously, we're going to defer to council in terms of, you know, what we can and cannot do. But, you know, the setbacks, we should understand the setbacks for the residences, for the schools. You know, certainly the pipelines that Mayor Ahern talked about in Broomfield, about insisting about pipelines being used rather than, you know, tank batteries to collect the oil and then truck it off. We need to, you know, do a full comprehensive review of other jurisdictions' best practices, all the other municipalities in the area that have enacted, you know, similar ordinances, as well as the counties. And then, you know, separate and apart from that, I think we need to have the conversation about whether or not, you know, home rule makes sense for us, and, you know, whether that is going to give us any additional powers as a municipality, whether it be enacting pollution taxes, things of that nature that we can't necessarily do as a statutory municipality. Independent of kind of the regulatory structure, and as we talked about it earlier, we need to aggressively reach out to CenturyLink now and figure out a way to acquire that for open space and dedicate that property in a way and construct it in a way for use by the public for open space purposes so that it can't be subject to oil and gas development. Independent of that, there's obviously the looming threat posed from oil and gas exploration under Rocky Flats or just adjacent to Superior. So the Rocky Flats issue is something that we're going to call on Tim and Matt and Kendra to address. But then we're going to need to, you know, formulate a state and a federal action plan to call upon our local state reps, our local state senators, the governor's office, the attorney general's office, and all the applicable administrative agencies. So I just want to make sure that we have that, you know, top of mind in terms of we're, you know, digging into all of our Rolodexes and contact lists and making sure that we're contacting the right people that, you know, we don't want to be told that just because we're a municipality and there's something next door that we have no power to stop it. So I want to make sure that we're thinking holistically from a state level. And then similarly, federal, because Rocky Flats implicates, Department of Energy, Fish and Wildlife Service, we should be reaching out to, our Congressman-elect Neguse, State Senator Bennett, Representative Perlmutter, and, make sure that we get some guidance. There has been statements made by David Abelson that the DOE would not sign on to drilling under Rocky Flats. And if that's the position, we need to have clarity. And I want something in writing from the applicable federal agencies that say, like, under no circumstances would they consent to it. Now, there's a question of whether they have the power or not, but we need to figure that out. And that goes to Kevin's point before, understanding the mineral rights owners, not only in Superior, but also in the surrounding areas. Because if it just takes one person to force a pool, it could be a problem for us, whether we like it or not, right? I also think that we should be looking into, to Ken's point earlier, whether we can be deploying our open space funds for the acquisition of mineral rights for preservation purposes to prevent their exploitation. Kind of separate and apart from that, I think we need to also survey the existing wells that are in the town and in the surrounding areas to see if they could pose any additional problems, and try to form a coalition of the surrounding neighbors. Like, I think, especially with the Rocky Flats issue, this is an opportunity for us to work with BOCO and Jeffco and Westminster and Arvada and Broomfield to all come together to prevent what is really an existential threat to all of us. There just shouldn't be fracking on Rocky Flats, and we need to be aggressive, and we need to, there's strength in numbers. We need to build that coalition on a local level, on a state level, on a federal level, and just ensure that that land doesn't get drilled or fracked. So those are my high-level thoughts. Obviously, a lot of this is going to need to be going into more detail in an executive session, but I wanted to just kind of put that out on the table and then hear all of your thoughts.
That's a great summary, Mark. I appreciate you putting that together. And I want to really include our residents that really came out in force and organized very quickly. And we've got a lot of really good talent in this community that I think we should be tapping into it as we go through this process to keep them informed, but to draw upon their expertise and really at a grass level or grassroots level. I think that'll help all of these things that you talked about. So, I'd like to see some kind of very close collaboration with resident groups that have coalesced around this issue. So look forward to doing that. Okay, Ken?
So I love everything that you guys said. I think hearing everything, which, I mean, that's a very heavy lift to knock out all of these steps. I think one of the things we need to do is prioritize what needs to happen in the immediate future and what can happen in staged steps. Not that we want to push anything down the road, but to make sure that we're focusing staff time, our lawyers' times, our times on what is the most important pieces. I like Kevin's idea of identifying the most vulnerable places in town immediately to ensure that we can address those areas up front and that we don't lose time on that. We know CenturyLink is a vulnerable area, so I don't think we lose time on working with them to see if we can build some type of relationship to purchase that land. To that extent, Matt Magley, I have a question about our relationship with Trust for Public Land and whether our relationship was purely with Justin Spring or whether it was with Trust for Public Land and how the conservation, or go ahead.
Yeah, that's who my contact was Justin Spring, and I think the Open Space Advisory Committee, that was their main contact as well. He is switched now. He is going to start with Conservation Fund in December. Actually, the town had worked with Conservation Fund in the past on the CenturyLink property. They were the ones that helped us get our first initial meetings with the level 3 executive staff at that time. So we have a relationship with both entities now, and we would just need to see if, we want to identify another staff member with Trust for Public Land or continue to work with Justin.
I think it would be beneficial if we could work with Trust for Public Land as well as the Conservation Fund. Going to the open space conferences held within the state. If there's anything that came out in all the different presentations from the municipalities about purchasing the land, it's build as many partnerships as you can, find funding sources, find whatever you can to help push things along. So if we can get both of these players in the room, my preference is that would be beneficial. Beyond that, I think this has to be one of our top priorities. We're not the same as all the other municipalities in the Front Range. We're 4 square miles. Any oil and gas operations are going to have a much larger impact on a higher percentage of our residents than in any other municipality in the Boulder County area. So moving on this immediately is one of the top priorities in my book.
Just real quickly, because I don't want to repeat what everybody has said, and it's really admirable, but what I want to make sure that we kind of think about this in sort of dual tracks. There's sort of the Rocky Flats issue, which remarkably reminds me of the Rocky Mountain Airport, in that we're a small neighbor to the flats, and yet we seem to be the only ones yelling and screaming about the issue. Matt, when we had the meeting here on the 12th, one of the things I'd asked is if you'd been able to contact or reach out to anyone from Jefferson County. And I'm curious, in those 2 days before Highlands rescinded their application, if you'd heard anything.
Yeah, Patrick had, or no, not Patrick, Stephen Williams, our town planner, had spoken to the oil and gas local government designee for Jefferson County, and then I had received a couple calls from him as well. We had talked to the City of Westminster staff, because they were very concerned about it, and I think they continue to be concerned about the Rocky Flats site, even though they're Stanley Lake and all the applications are withdrawn. So yes,
that's great. No, I mean, it means, at least in this case, when it comes to Rocky Flats, we have a consortium of folks that are in the same exact issue. I mean, we all share the same exact goal. So for me, it's the Rocky Flats, as Mark called it, the existential issue. There's no one anywhere in the 50 square miles that wants anything to happen to that place, other than apparently some folks in Arvada. But let's leave that as it is. It needs 6 feet of concrete on top of it, and I think I'll be happy. But I don't want our efforts to define what we want for oil and gas to get sort of pulled to the side because of what we ultimately want in Rocky Flats. So from a work stream perspective, I almost think that we should have two. One is continue to advocate for the nothing ever happens to Rocky Flats, and there's define everything we can to fence off for, Superior as much as we can from oil and gas development. So just to keep that in mind.
So I agree. And obviously we talked about a lot of things. So, the way I look at it, if we're digesting this into something that is implementable, right? And we've got an action plan. So I think number one, we need to enact appropriate regulations and ordinances that will sufficiently, protect our residents, right? The health and safety of our residents. Separately, we need to aggressively try to acquire CenturyLink property, right? So those are kind of like the two local areas. And then the larger Rocky Flats issue, I mean, that really is a concerted lobbying effort that we need to be engaged in with as many other municipalities, county governments, state officials as possible for really two things. Number one, and these may be different teams of partners that we have, right? So there's a group of interested parties who should be joined together to oppose any and all efforts to develop oil and gas under Rocky Flats. So that's one team. Second team is a more concerted effort to lobby the State House and the State Senate for local control statutes to give more powers to municipalities that we otherwise don't have. And that's a separate issue from the Rocky Flats issue. But I think that's an equally important issue, because ultimately, if it comes down to we don't have the ability, whether we're a home rule municipality or a statutory municipality, because this is something that has been given to the states, we're going to need help from the State House, the State Senate, and the governor's office to actually sign on to that thing. And that may be an impossibility, but right now, with the current makeup of the state legislature, it's probably the only time that anything like this will actually move forward. So it's something that we need to be aggressively lobbying our local representatives and state senators for any and all help that they can give us in that regard. And then if we have an application that comes, we have the moratorium to deploy if we're not ready with the ordinances and regulations.
I have a question of Matt's regarding moratorium and permit applications. And the question is, so tonight we've tabled this item of adopting an ordinance for a moratorium. And the primary reason that we've tabled that is not because we don't believe it's necessary. We believe that we need additional legal counsel before we would be prepared to adequately deploy that. So our tabling it is not we don't think it's necessary anymore. It's just we need more strategy. But to that end, there are no permits currently pending. If a permit is pulled tomorrow, is a moratorium too late at that point? I mean, does a moratorium need to be in place before a permit application is pulled, or can it be deployed after a permit application is pulled to work on the same things?
Yeah, thanks for the question. There is a pending ordinance doctrine. You've already alerted the world that there is going to be a new oil and gas ordinance, and you can then use that to more or less stay that pending application that comes before you, to say that, we're going to have to put this on hold because we've got this pending ordinance that you know about, because there's been a lot of media about it and it's been in all of our agendas. So there's that protection. Ultimately, I think, though, that you're going to know about an application before it comes to you. I think that they will probably file with the Colorado Gas Conservation Commission first, as they did previously, and that will give you the heads up. There's also rules, Colorado Gas Conservation Commission rules, that require operators to notify local governments, specifically municipalities, if they're intending to drill within their boundaries. That gives you a heads up as well. And that might be the first thing that we do, is just to find out, is this a one-off? Is Upland the only one out there, or are there other companies that are either going to take Upland's place, or that are also seeking minerals in the area, not necessarily under Rocky Flats, but other areas around Superior. I don't think that a moratorium is necessary at this point, but we'll know more in the coming month. And if I think that there's any chance, it doesn't hurt to put forward a moratorium. I think that the rules and regulations that are needed here in Superior, I've done all the research that you've already asked for. I'm familiar with every local government jurisdiction, those that are at least leading edge, codes and memorandums of understanding and operator agreements, all these different strategies to get protections that go far beyond the Colorado Gas Conservation Commission. And so we can get that done in short order. And 6 months is plenty of time.
One of the things that 6 months would not be enough time for, though, would be if we were going to go home rule. So we're going to need to know,
fair point,
as soon as possible, what we would gain by going home rule to be able to make a decision as to whether or not that's something that we want to put on the table. Because if that's the case, then we need to put together the charter commission and get it on the ballot for next year. And that's going to be a 12-month process to go home rule.
Right.
I agree. I mean, we never, I personally never really saw the burning platform for home rule, which is why I had a difficult time prioritizing. If this becomes the platform, then great. So, but that's,
Right. But we need to figure that out,
Yeah.
like, immediately.
I agree.
Could that be a retreat topic for December 17th, as we have this as a, could we have that answer to this question of what
I'll
would
tell you
home rule
this,
do?
I'll work with Matt and Kendra, and if we think we can put the information together by the 17th, we can have it. We'll work towards that.
You will, I'm sure you will know more by December 17th than we know today. It's just we
Right.
have the complete picture by December 17th. So
And
I
then-
think it's worthy to discuss, just may not be the.
Right. And then I would like to schedule executive session with Matt. It doesn't necessarily need to be in December, but, sometime early in 2019, January, where we can start kind of going through crafting what the ordinances are going to look like, what they're going to contain, to make sure that we're all, not missing anything.
I think that sounds great.
Okay.
And just to clarify for the retreat, the home rule discussion, if we can, I'd like to have more around the home rule discussion than just this aspect of things. Basically, as much as we can pull together around the home rule aspect.
And a lot of that we can pull off the shelf, because
Yeah.
we did have pretty exhaustive
Oh, yeah.
discussions on this in 2015, I believe it was. So we can just kind of dust that off and pull it out. But I agree, it's more than, it is definitely more than this. Yeah.
Does Colorado Municipal League offer any guidance along this issue?
We had Sam Mamet in here, and
Great.
So yes, they've been a big help.
I'm sure we've
on
also
that discussion.
done memos kind of giving an overview of, transition from statutory to home rule municipality also.
Yes.
So I'm sure we have a number of those that we could provide the town with.
Yes. Okay. I'd like to offer an opportunity for public comment on this agenda item. If there's no further questions from the board at this time, we can certainly have some after public comment, but anyone in public might like to comment on this agenda item. Sure. Tim?
Hello, my name's Tim Howard. First, I want to thank everyone on the board and Mayor Folsom for taking this as seriously as so many of your citizens do, and the urgency that you're placing on putting an action plan together. I think that's fantastic. The one thing that I would like to suggest, back to your, Mayor Folsom, your comment about engaging with the grassroots groups and so forth. We have assembled a good bit of expertise and so forth, not equivalent to yours, Matt, by any means, but in a number of other capacities that could be potentially beneficial. So want to make that offer. The other thing is, in terms of building coalitions and working with other towns, don't look past the benefit of also engaging with the various citizens groups that have come together in supporting what you're doing, because we can potentially bring a message to the media and to others that you can't, that can be very effective in highlighting specific issues. And then the last point would be this. When you look at the ordinances, when you look at things like the moratorium and so forth, I would strongly suggest that you be bold. We are in a somewhat unique position in that we are less vulnerable than many other towns. We can probably put in place some things that might push the envelope a little bit. And while I understand that may carry some risk, it can also put us in a leadership position that can then signal to our state representatives and so forth so that we can get action there. So that's just a personal plea, but I believe it's supported by the group of activists that we brought together. So, thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment? All right, seeing none.
So I think Tim raises a really good point, and thank you for that, Tim. One of the things that was so, I think, impactful about the work session that we had was, the ability that, we really had a dialogue with the public, right? And the public came up and they spoke, and Matt was, speaking and answering questions that they had. When we're sitting up here on the dais and we've got a meeting agenda and a packet and it's rigid and formulaic, that doesn't do much to, alleviate the concern of the residents. People want their questions answered, right? They want to have a dialogue. So I think, to the extent that we could, schedule some work sessions, something a little less formal, a little informal kind of, work session where, we're inviting the public, we're inviting, the citizen groups, and use that as a, collaborative, brainstorming session, or, this is where we are, this is where we're going, and answer any questions. I think that would be really, really important and really valuable in terms of getting ideas for moving forward. So I definitely support, doing something a little out of the ordinary, with these working sessions, just because I think that this issue is such a personal matter and such an issue of such concern to the public that it needs special attention from us.
Agreed. Okay, others? All right, we're right on schedule. It's 10:30. We're winding down. Anything else? All right, we are adjourned.